Check.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 2019 Pro Football Draft SkolCast. We're live from Main Street Sports Bar. Chris Wilkie here along with Jeremy Carter, and we are broadcasting live from Main Street Sports Bar, Hutchinson, Minnesota. We got an exciting night. Tonight is the 2019 NFL Draft, and this is going to be an unpredictable night. Jeremy, I'm thinking we're going to see some things that we're not going to expect.
That may even scare us a little bit, right?
Exactly. We've got some teams that are probably going to move up and down in this draft. We'll get through that. We've got roughly 3 hours. We're going to bring you right up until the Minnesota Vikings make their pick at number 18. And tonight when they make their pick at 18, we'll see if that pick holds. I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes the Vikings have been known to trade up or trade back. We'll see where they're in kind of a decent spot right now, but we'll see where they end up picking. Hopefully, we'll get through all that in 3 hours. First of all, we'd like to make a couple of thank yous. First of all, thank you to Main Street Sports Bar here in Hutchinson for hosting us tonight. We've got a nice crowd out here already, and looking forward to everybody else that could come out. Also, a couple other thank yous. I'd like to thank Cody Barrett, who put together all of our graphics and everything for our SkolCast. He was working late into the night last night on it, and he did a great job to make the broadcast look as good as it can look for everybody that's
fantastic.
That's doing our live stream here. So definitely appreciate him. Cody, thanks for all the work. And all of you that come out for tonight. So with that, we're going to get started.
Just a quick shout out to Nate Baldry too for some branded solutions for some of the shirts and some of the things he put together for us too. Was able to get some things done and kind of in the pinch, and so we appreciate his efforts as well.
Absolutely. So we are definitely looking forward to tonight, and a lot of things. So little to get to, and so much time. Is that what I always say?
That's usually what it is, or is it vice versa, backwards? It could be backwards too, right?
Exactly. So we're going to run you through a few things, just high level, kind of draft related to start, and then we're going to dive into some of the more of the Vikings specific topics here coming up, and then once the draft, right before the draft kicks off at 7 o'clock, it's scheduled to start at 7 o'clock Central. It's live in Nashville this year, so the draft will be held in Nashville. The NFL has gone to a system of selecting a host city for the draft every single year, and that's kind of cool. Last year, I believe it was in Philadelphia?
Correct.
And then the year before that, it was in Chicago. So it used to be in New York historically for many years, and now the draft is moving every year, and it's kind of cool to see. We've been to Nashville for a Vikings game in the past. It's a fun city, and I'm sure they're having a blast there tonight.
Yeah, it looked fantastic downtown. They showed some of the pictures downtown with the large stage set up, and so that's definitely a party city, a party capital. They certainly accommodate venues down there, such as the NFL Draft, so that's going to be a fantastic site down there. Next year, I think it's in Las Vegas, correct? I think is what I heard. Vegas.
Yep. So the Raiders are moving to L.A., and that stadium, when we were in L.A., the Raiders are moving to Las Vegas. When we were in L.A. for the game this last year, we visited Las Vegas and got to see their stadium going up. So a lot of cool things happening in the NFL, a lot of things to to keep in mind over the coming year. So that'll be great. So we're going to kind of move into some high-level draft things here and get you started, kick it right off. And we're going to start. Let's run through tonight's draft order. Now, pick number 1 is going to go to the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll make some predictions for some different picks later on in the show. But I would say that Arizona's in a nice spot here. They have a lot of needs, and new head coach Cliff Kingsbury, he definitely has a lot of needs. What are they looking at from a needs standpoint, Jeremy?
So really what the needs are for the Cardinals, they need an inside pass rusher. You know, they're a little light on that. They tried addressing some of those issues in the last year's draft. Of course, they picked up Josh Rosen, the number 1 pick, and so they were a little light from that standpoint. So they need an inside interior lineman on the defensive side. They certainly need another pass rusher to go along on the left side of the edge. And then they need some inside to line play, and if they can add another weapon or two on the outside, Those are really their primary needs. Secondary needs: cornerback, linebacker, offensive tackle, as a lot of teams need offensive tackles, interior guard play, and then tight end. If they can pick up an athletic tight end, that's certainly in play. The position that we've talked about, and that's kind of been the big buzz, is a position that they don't necessarily need, which is quarterback. But the big talk and the big buzz around the NFL is, are they going to pick up Kyler Murray? Of course, we all know that they brought in Cliff Kingsbury, and what he wants to do fits well with Kyle Murray's repertoire, right? He's very athletic. He can move outside the pocket. He's got quick twitch muscles. He's got a strong, accurate throwing arm. Again, I guess the knock, if there is any knock on Kyler Murray that doesn't check all the boxes, it's his height. But we all have seen over the last few years that the height doesn't always necessarily mean that you're not a good player from a quarterback position with Russell Wilson and some of those guys. So those are some of the primary ones to start out. So we'll see where that goes.
I don't see Arizona trading out of this spot, but it'll be interesting to see what they do here. I've got my prediction. We'll talk about that later as we get into the draft at 7 o'clock. After that, we're looking at the San Francisco 49ers, and once again, new general manager John Lynch. They are rebuilding this team. They picked up Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, who subsequently blew out his knee last year. And then they also, from a Vikings standpoint, they picked up Jerick McKinnon at a running back standpoint. He also blew out his ACL.
He did.
So they had a couple of significant knee injuries on the 49ers last year. And so, but John Lynch is looking to rebuild this team, and so they have quite a few needs as well. Pick number 2 for them.
Yeah, so really their primary needs are really on the defensive side for the most part. They're looking to holster and beef up that side. So they're going to be looking at an edge rusher. They're looking at safety, cornerback. And again, if they can add another wide receiver, someone in the slot, someone out wide, they certainly will do that. But I think the buzz around the NFL and really I think the pick that is probably going to be what I would say is one of the probably more sure picks is the number 2 pick. And it looks like Nick Bosa. I mean, from everything I've read, from every mock draft that I've seen out there from the analysts, even from some of the things coming out of the camp in the San Francisco 49ers, he is the most complete NFL-ready rusher. And so I just don't see them moving out of that slot with that pick. I think it's a sure pick for him that he can step in and play right away.
Absolutely, yeah. And then looking at pick number 3, we got the Jets. They'll be on the clock. They are definitely another team that towards the bottom of the NFL. The Vikings cleaned them up pretty handily last year. They definitely have a lot of needs. They need an edge rusher. They need a corner. They need an offensive on the offensive side of the ball. They need some help on the offensive line. They need some interior defensive linemen. Even from a quarterback standpoint, Sam Darnold is over there. I'm not sure. I think they're still trying to figure him out, and we'll see where the Jets land as well with this pick.
Yeah, that's been an interesting kind of story that's developed over the last couple days with some of the stuff that I've been looking at and reading. There has been some claims out there that the New York Jets would be willing to move down in the draft a few notches and allow some teams to move up. One of the ones that I've been hearing lately is the Washington Redskins moving up from the 15th pick to the number 3 pick to address their quarterback position. So that'll be an interesting and a fluid draft spot for the New York Jets. Certainly with the interior line on the defensive side, they certainly have a couple pieces on the front 4 already. But I think if they can bring in another dominant NFL-ready interior defensive lineman, I think that front 4 becomes extremely strong, and I think one of the top 4 teams, certainly in the top 8 to 10 range. And so the one that seems to be the logical choice if Nick Bosa isn't there is Quinnen Williams from Alabama. So I think that's a logical choice. But again, if they want to move down and pick up someone else, or they have some other needs that they want to address and they want to allow someone to skip up and take that position, then that certainly gives them an extra draft pick or 2 potentially.
Yeah, and I have Quinnen Williams actually number 1 on my entire big board here. So he's a top 5 film grade defensive lineman, and I think if the Jets got him, they'd be in good shape there on the defensive line, like you said. So going back to Nick Bosa for a second, I think he's going to be a good player as well. He's following in his brother's footsteps. Joey Bosa for the Chargers, but we'll see who picks him up. Number 4, slotted number 4, the Oakland Raiders. Again, like I mentioned earlier, they're moving to Las Vegas. A lot of needs out there. John Gruden has a lot of needs on that team. I don't even know if he's fully settled at the quarterback position right now with Carr.
David Carr, yep.
David Carr. Yeah, so I don't even know if
You've already shipped him down the road? You can't
I've already
remember.
shipped him down the road. I don't even know if they're settled on David Carr at this point. So I definitely think that's a work in progress. But we talked about this in an earlier SkolCast. Who did they add at wide receiver? Antonio Brown.
Yep.
So on the offensive side of the ball, they're looking like they're improving. But what are some of their other needs?
So a few of their needs, an edge rusher. They certainly need an edge rusher to come in and complement the defense. The running back, they're certainly going to need that. Marshawn Lynch has acknowledged his retirement, so he will no longer be there to pick up some of the workload for the Raiders. And so they're going to be looking for some of those types of things. Tight end is another one that's out there. They're pretty set on the offensive line. I mean, they're pretty okay there. If anything, maybe you're looking at an interior offensive lineman, a center or guard that you can kind of move around, someone that's got some flexibility, and there's plenty of those guys in the draft that will be there for the first and second and third rounds. But I think they'll look with some of the top draft picks that are in this year's draft, particularly on the defensive side, and you got some particularly good pass rushers on the edge. They're in a good spot to really pick it up. And keep in mind, they have 3 draft picks in the first round. So they have a lot of flexibility as well if they want to move up and down and move around in the draft based on where they want to be, and if they think they can acquire another pick or 2 in the draft and bolster some more options, or they certainly can. But I think a couple of those guys that are out there, Josh Allen's been one that's been talked about. Rashawn Gary from Michigan's been out there that they've talked about that they like from an edge rusher. And I think a lot of the running backs, I don't think you're going to see a lot of those go in the first round. I think where that real value is the second and third round, so I don't see them addressing that right away. But you never know.
Yeah, I think this first round of the draft is going to be heavy. You're going to have defensive linemen, offensive linemen. You're going to have some wide receivers go. We can talk about some of those, like a DK Metcalf and some of that from Ole Miss. But I think those are the strengths of this first round, and being able to siphon and sift through that for these teams is going to be important tonight. And I've read a lot of different things over the last week, and you and I kind of talked about this earlier. There's kind of, you can get to a point of analysis by paralysis, and us as fans or people out there doing mock drafts and going back and forth and that kind of a thing, you look at these and you could look at tens or hundreds of them in the course of a few weeks, and everybody's got an opinion on where it's going to land. But at the end of the day, the team has a big board in their draft room, in their war room, that they're going to go with, and they're going to stick to that. And if they stick to that, they should pick the best player available. We've seen what happens with the Vikings specifically in the past when we don't pick the best player available. We draft for need. So when we draft for need, we draft people like Christian Ponder, Troy Williamson. When we pick the best player available, we take Adrian Peterson, and we take Randy Moss, people like that.
Right.
So if these teams stick to that best player available situation, they should be in good shape.
Well, I know Spielman's come out recently in the last few days and said that too, that there are some potential situations, and I think everyone knows, and they certainly understand, that some of their real need is in the offensive line, right? They need to bolster that offensive line, particularly with the teams that we're going to be playing on our schedule this year. There's a lot of front fours that have some real strength, some real dominant players, and so they understand that that's a need. But I think every team is also challenged with, if there's a better player out there that scores higher and has more of the tangibles and checks more of the boxes, but isn't a real need for the team, it's hard to look past that player and take someone, as you described, for the need versus a true legitimate player that can be a difference changer at whatever position, whether it's cornerback, whether it's linebacker, whether it's running back. And so I think some of those things will kind of play out here, and I think you will see some teams that we think will pick a certain position because that's where their need is. But if someone falls down, if a real high-level scoring defensive lineman moves down or an edge rusher moves down because a team decides to go in a different direction, some of those teams that don't think that those players are going to be there, middle of the first round, that maybe there all of a sudden it changes the dynamic and they go, you know what, we need to go this direction because this guy is an immediate impact player for us. And so that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of go off the cuff here a second. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll take everybody through all the first picks up through the Vikings pick when they're scheduled to pick at 18. If we go through all 32 picks, we'll probably be here until 7 o'clock. So let's take them through number 18, and let's continue on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They pick number 5 at this point. They have some needs as well, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. They're in need of a linebacker first and foremost, also an edge rusher. It seems like everybody's in need of an edge rusher. They also need a corner, and that's the old saying in the NFL is you can never have too many corners. You know, the NFL is a pass-happy league, and you know, the teams aren't going to go away from that philosophy. And so, you know, drafting a corner in the first round, we did it last year. We picked up Mike Hughes, and so I would not put it past them as well. So that's one of their needs. But we'll see what the Buccaneers do and with pick 5.
Yeah, I certainly think their linebacker or cornerback is, I think, where they're looking. I mean, I think a lockdown cornerback in today's passing league is just as valuable or can be right up there with a good pass rusher.
Absolutely.
If you can put someone on an island against some other team's top receiver and do well, that takes away another player that you have to shift over and move over that direction. So I think they're strongly looking at the defensive side of the ball.
For sure. Next pick is New York Giants, number 6, and this is another intriguing one. I don't know where they're going to go with this. Eli Manning is aging. What does he have, a year or 2 maybe left in him? This team needs to draft a quarterback, and I don't know which direction they're going to go, but I'm going to tell you right now, I think if Kyler Murray falls, I'm going to watch this team to take him. I feel like that it could go that way. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I think if he falls, this is one of the teams I'm watching to take him.
So you think maybe they pass on Kyler Murray and take a defensive lineman? Is that what you're...
No, I think if the Cardinals don't take Kyler Murray, I think the Giants might. We need to watch that. So.
Who did the Cardinals pick up then? Defensive lineman? You're not going to give it away.
I'm not going to give
huh?
that away. I'll give it away here in 45 minutes.
Going to keep things secret, huh? Yeah, I certainly agree with you. I mean, I think they're going to try to address a quarterback. A question I have is, do they do it for the 6th pick or do they do it with the 17th pick? You know, I think a lot of those quarterbacks will be there. Some of the ones, you know, the quarterback from Duke, Drew Lock from Missouri, I think those guys will be there because I think the top half of the draft is going to be defense dominated or, you know, with interior linemen or some offensive linemen. But that is a possibility. Or Dwayne Haskins, too, if he's still there. Which
absolutely.
Is a possibility,
So Chris Wilkie, Jeremy Carter here with you. This live SkolCast from Main Street Sports Bar in Hutchinson, Minnesota. Appreciate you all joining us here on site at Main Street tonight and also on our live stream on Facebook. And we will post this to YouTube after the fact as well. Appreciate, once again, everybody joining us here live. We're running through the teams and the order in which they're going to draft. We're taking you up to the 18th pick in the draft tonight, where the Vikings hold that pick. And we'll see if they stay there, but right now they're number 18. So pick number 7 in the draft is going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you would have asked me a year ago, will the Jacksonville Jaguars have pick number 7 in the draft, I would have said you're crazy. They were in the AFC Championship game, and they absolutely fell flat last season.
Or if you say, hey, they need to pick up some defensive guys, you would think the same thing, right? Dominant defense. I mean, that's really what got them to the AFC Championship was dominant run-stopping ability, playmakers on the edge, and some of those guys have left, and their defense wasn't strong this year. So I think that's twofold.
For sure.
You know, so.
For sure. Pick number 8, Detroit Lions. Again, a division foe. You're always looking to beat your division foe twice in a year and shore up that division record. I feel like in a perennial way, they need help on the defensive side of the ball at corner. I don't ever feel like they're ever shored up correctly at corner. You know, they've gotten torched in some of the games. They usually have one decent corner and then one kind of not up to par corner. So I think that's a need for them. They also need a tight end. Eric Ebron left them and last season, so they're in need of of a nice pass catching tight end. So I'm interested to see what Detroit does as well.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. I think they'll look at the defensive side of the ball. I think another pass rusher. I think there'll be a couple high-scoring college players that will probably be still there for that 8th pick, and so that it wouldn't be above them to pick up someone on the defensive side to bolster that side, particularly in a league in the NFC North where you have some fairly competent quarterbacks that like to spread the ball around, and so any pressure you can get on Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins or Matthew Stafford helps take some pressure, off of some of those guys, and so we'll see.
Buffalo Bills, this is a team that they have the unfortunate pleasure, just like the Jets, of being in the AFC East with the New England Patriots, and they definitely need some help as well. They've been, I think just like everybody else, looking at defense, they need offensive line help as well. I would say for them, wide receiver as well. They traded Sammy Watkins to the LA Rams, so they definitely need help at that position. This is a team that I'm not as familiar with, but definitely they have some needs as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to bolster some of the defensive side. I mean, if there's a good pass rusher out there from the edge or a dominant interior defensive lineman, they certainly need to bolster some of that. Their run defense wasn't all that great last year. I think they were middle to the bottom third of the league as far as stopping on the run on that. Certainly, offensive tackles. I mean, if you could get a dominant offensive tackle at the 9th pick that can be a franchise player for you for the next 10 years, that can be on the left side or the right side and can move into space and do some of those things, I think they're going to strongly look at that as well, because those guys don't come around all that often, and there's quite a few offensive tackles that can be game changers for a lot of teams, and so they're in a good position at 9 to take advantage of some of those things. Receiver, I agree with you too.
For sure. Denver Broncos, John Elway at the GM there, and I think I don't know if this pick is going to be that, but I definitely think that John Elway has positioned himself for this draft where he needs to take a quarterback. I don't know if it's going to be with the 10th pick in the draft, but I'm looking at the Denver Broncos saying, you had Case Keenum last year, you got rid of him and sent him to Washington. You now have Joe Flacco. You traded for him from the Ravens. Joe Flacco's got a nice arm. He's not real mobile, but I'm looking at the Broncos, and they need a quarterback, Jeremy.
So who's your quarterback here? Hypothetically, if they're there, if they stay in the 10th pick, who do you like there? Who does John Elway like there that complements Joe Flacco? Let's be honest. Joe Flacco's probably a couple years. They're going to be looking for that succession plan for that long-term quarterback coming out of the draft. There also is some concern about next year's draft having some more prominent quarterbacks coming out than this year's draft. So do you think they need that immediate draft pick at the quarterback this year if they really like someone, or do you think they go, yeah, we can do it, but we can get a year behind it if we have someone that's can fill in the void if Joe Flacco goes down because there's some better quarterbacks or some more dominant quarterbacks coming out next year? Or do you think he pulls the trigger this year?
I think assuming that, and that's an assumption, injury is a big assumption in the NFL, but I think that
you're always one play away, right?
You're always one play away, but if Joe Flacco stays healthy, I think they're fine at the quarterback position. They could bide their time a little bit. You could take a quarterback. The Broncos could take a quarterback later in this draft, but if he doesn't, if he pulls the trigger here at 10, I'm wondering if it's Dwayne Haskins. That's what I'm wondering. But that's assuming Kyler Murray's gone. Everybody thinks he's going to be. We'll see what happens.
Do you like Dwayne Haskins better than Locke?
Than Drew Lock
yeah.
Out of Missouri?
In Denver, in the Denver scheme?
I would say that's a good question. I think Drew Lock would fit in there well. I don't see Drew Lock going with the number 10 pick, though, in this draft. I don't know if he's valued that high. But I see what you're saying from a scheme fit. But I think we might be looking at a different pick there at 10 and not necessarily a quarterback.
Okay. Put you on the hot seat. I think they look at a quarterback, but I think if some of the inside linebackers there, I think if Devin White's there from LSU, I mean, he's a dominant playmaker that goes on that side of the ball with Von Miller and some of those things that they're looking to do. To me, that's a safer pick that addresses a more immediate need right away for the Denver Broncos to really shore up and become, again, one of the higher level echelon defensive guys. but they're certainly going to have to address that, at some point with picking up Joe Flacco. So,
for sure. One more team that we're not so familiar with, leading up to a team that we're really familiar with. So number 11, Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Zimmer's old team that he was the defensive coordinator for. This team has some needs. They have some needs at linebacker. They have some needs on the offensive side of the ball at the offensive line and the tight end position. I'll be interested to see which way they go there with their new head coach as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to put some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball to help out Dalton. I think they look at a tight end seriously when you've got two good guys from Iowa that are coming out that have similar qualities. I think one is a little bit more athletic, but maybe not as polished, maybe not as staunch of a run blocker as Hutchinson is, and I'm talking about Fant in that situation. So I think they'll definitely look at that position and take a look at that and see. Again, if there's a strong offensive tackle on the left side of the ball that could give him some protection, I think they definitely look at that as well. And they look at some linebackers. If there's some linebackers out there that they like that don't go above them, I think they look at that side of the ball too and bolster some of that.
I actually have Hawkinson going right here.
I do too.
So I think we might have two tight ends going right here in a row. Hawkinson at 11, and then number 12, Green Bay Packers, the despised rival of the Vikings. I think if Noah Fant is there at 12, I think the Green Bay Packers are going tight end Noah Fant and give Aaron Rodgers a weapon. What do you think about that pick?
I think it's a safe pick. My only piece with him is he's probably got more upside than Hawkinson. He's a little bit more athletic. He can separate a little bit more. I think you can put him out a little bit more on the wide side of the field and have him run more like a receiver. I think he's a good pick. I think it takes him a little bit more to develop into the big playmaker than Hawkinson will immediately. The piece that concerns me a little bit with him versus Hawkinson is he's been known not to be as dominant of a run blocker. So if you're going to be a predominant or try to tailor your offense to be more run-based than you have in the past, and again, we all know Aaron Rodgers and we know him very well, then you maybe have a little piece there to play with. But it certainly gives Aaron Rodgers another weapon, which if you're a Vikings fan, you don't necessarily like to see because he's going to be a nightmare matchup for us. He's going to outrun linebackers. He's going to be big enough that he's going to be a problem matchup for some of our safeties and cornerbacks. So I do like that pick there. Another pick I like in that area for Green Bay is a safety. If they can get a staunch safety or a lockdown safety that can move around and do some things and wreak some havoc on the defensive side, I think they certainly look there too. And I've looked at Jonathan Abrams, safety out of Mississippi State. I think he fits the defensive side of the ball very well. So I think there's a possibility there as well for him.
Yeah, you bet. Next pick we're looking at going down to the South Beach, Miami Dolphins, and this one for me is a wild card. I'm looking at the quarterback position from Miami with Ryan Tannehill, and they need a quarterback. And this is where I think that another spot where if Kyler Murray falls from the first pick and Arizona doesn't take him and the Giants don't take him, I think he could fall all the way down to Miami. I don't see Denver taking him. I don't see another team possibly taking him up until Miami. This is another wild card for me in Miami. The other piece is if it's a quarterback, it could be Drew Lock here. I don't know.
Well, they have definitely a lot of needs, right? Just like we do. There's a lot of holes that they can fill. And I think they will look at some of the best available players in the positions that they have. I think when you start looking at Miami at 13th pick down to the 23rd pick, I think you start seeing some offensive linemen really start to go. I think we've gotten through the brash of some of the strong defensive linemen, some of the edge rushers, some of the linebackers that have kind of separated themselves from the remaining portion that will be in the second and third, fourth rounds. And so I think here, if they don't go quarterback route, I can definitely see them picking up Andre Dillard from Washington State. Fits their scheme fairly well. The piece that he's been involved in with the Washington State is they've predominantly a passing team, a predominantly zone blocking team. So he's a lockdown tackle on the passing side of the ball. I guess the one thing where he maybe has to take a little bit more development is on the run side of the ball. They just weren't a running team there. But certainly a guy that is an anchor, that he can shore up your tackle position for 10 years.
For sure.
Some few techniques and things. So that's a possibility, I think, for him. And I know that's probably, he's probably on the board for the Vikings as well with some of the things they want to do. So
Absolutely. Leads us to pick 14. We're almost there. We're 4 from the Vikings. Atlanta's next on the clock. Again, I don't see a lot of offensive side of the ball needs. I see, Matt Ryan at quarterback, Julio Jones at wide receiver. They on the offensive side of the ball, at least with this initial pick, I don't see them going offense here. I think this is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. They need an edge rusher. So I'm looking at Atlanta to take an edge rusher here with pick number 14. I've got him locked in at Brian Burns right here. Pick 14, edge rusher out of Florida State is who I have right here for Atlanta. But we can, as the draft goes on, just to kind of let everybody know this is fluid, but we will we'll adjust this accordingly. But that's what I have right now. I've got Brian Burns at this pick for Atlanta.
I think they'd be happy to get him if he falls that far. I don't think Brian Burns is around that long. I think if Buffalo is really looking to shore up their edge, I think Brian Burns, he goes with the 9th pick. If he's not there, I think he is a logical choice. But I do think they pick up someone on the defensive side. So I have Cleveland Farrell from Clemson, edge rusher, that they could pick up, and he could immediately get in the start. Has some tangibles. Doesn't maybe quite have the length as the Brian Burrows. Maybe isn't quite as quick around the edge, but still, he played well. He played in a tough conference down there and had good numbers, and so I think he would be a good fit there as well. But I think they're definitely looking at the defensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. Pick 15, Washington. Again, Daniel Snyder is always rebuilding this team. I don't know when he's not. He's always looking for a quarterback. He's using older running backs like Adrian Peterson in the spot. So I think they have a lot of needs as well. Washington is always a mystery to me. They could be a playoff team one year, and the next year they could be 5-11. But usually in the playoffs they usually sneak in. They're, and especially that NFC East. You're playing against Dallas. You're playing against the New York Giants. And the Eagles, it's a toss-up. So it's all a matter of where the chips fall for Washington, but they have some needs. Is Case Keenum the answer at quarterback long-term? They got a lot of issues to look at over there on that side of the ball as well. They need a wide receiver. They need offensive linemen. They need some help.
Yeah, I don't know that they think Case Keenum is probably a long-term answer for them. I think he's certainly a capable quarterback that can do the job, and we've seen flashes of him with the Minnesota Vikings, and he had some flashes with the Denver Broncos. Of course, he's also had some not so real great flashes in some of the games as well. But I think he's a serviceable quarterback that can do the job. But I think in order for him to do a better job, you need to put weapons around him. And so I think this is a good spot. If they don't move up and try to acquire one of the top 1 or 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the draft, if they don't want to make the trade with the New York Jets, I really like DK Metcalf. I know some people think, he may fall 2nd or 3rd as far as the receiving core, but I have watched film on this guy. He is a large guy. They're comparing him to Calvin Johnson, 228 pounds, 6'3", 6'4" guy. And surprisingly, he ran a 4.33 in the combine. One of the fastest receivers, and he's got the size and the height. The piece that's a little bit of knock on him is he isn't quite a polished route runner yet. But those are teachable and tangible things that you can teach with a coaching staff. So you put a guy like that immediately in your offensive side of the ball, and that is a nightmare matchup with that type of speed and size and physicality that he has. So that's an impact player right away. I don't know if they're going to go that quickly with the receivers in the first round, but he's a guy that I like in that system now.
I actually, you can look at my sheet. I have DK Metcalf right here as well.
Do you really?
I do. I have him going to the Redskins. DK Metcalf, I've watched film on him too.
Did you see the pictures of him?
He's a freak. He's a freak wide receiver.
That's a big guy.
He's a big guy. But he ran the fast 40, the 4.3.
Of course, that's a straight line.
It's a straight line.
We understand that.
But at the same time, to me, is he just a red zone target? possibly. I don't know. Is he a big red zone target? And if he is that a value of a number one overall, of a number one first round pick? I have more I have to see about him. I'm interested to see that. He kind of reminds me, and I don't know why I'm putting the comparison down. It's because it's an Ole Miss thing, but I'm thinking of Laquan Treadwell with him. He's a bigger body receiver. Maybe Laquan doesn't have that breakaway speed.
I was just going to ask you. Was he a 4.3 guy?
No.
Laquan?
No.
Wasn't his big talent that he had good hands?
Yes.
He was a matchup in the red zone. He was a big body. He could jump, but he couldn't separate from cornerbacks, or he couldn't separate from the elite safeties. Now, time will tell with Metcalf, but some of the films I've seen at Ole Miss with some of the games that he's played, and again, I certainly understand some of those teams that they played, they're not NFL caliber secondaries back there, but he has enough speed to separate from a lot of guys in the secondary. The piece that I also like about him, even if he doesn't have if he didn't have the great 40, even if he was a 4-5 guy, and you put him on a slant route or you put him on a stop route, how many quarterbacks and safeties are that big and that physical that he can't body off of a play to the outside or the inside? So I like that aspect of his as well. I guess time will tell on his crisp route running, but I think you can refine some of those things. The physical attributes, I think they're hard to come by.
I agree, but we haven't been able to find that piece with Laquan Treadwell either.
You're right.
We just haven't been able to refine that and to teach it and to coach it. Now, last year he had the drops initially. I think he cleaned up the drops the second half of the season. It looked a lot better. We're not talking about Laquan Treadwell, but we're kind of leading. We've kind of just gone off on a tangent here, but right. I think we'll see what happens with DK Metcalf. He's definitely going in the first round. I can tell you that. He's going in the first round.
I think he will too. Some people don't show him going in the first round. Maybe beginning of second round, mid-second round, and there's a lot of other receivers in there. Sometimes I think it depends on the situation of the offense too, right? If you're short up on the outside and you're really looking for some slot receivers that really can get in out of breaks real quickly, maybe you go, maybe he isn't the perfect fit for my scheme. But again, is he the best available player? And can you change? Can you morph his abilities into what you're trying to do? Because he's got the size, and that is a nightmare for anyone.
Yeah, and you can't teach size.
No, you can't.
You can't. All right. Pick 16, Carolina Panthers. They're all set at quarterback, I would say. They need some help on the defensive side of the ball. They need an edge rusher. They need an offensive lineman. Matt Khalil is no longer with them. One of the biggest busts in NFL and the Vikings history, I think. We'll go over some of that in a little bit. As we get into the actual draft, we're going to do I have some interesting takes on the Vikings and some of the past draft history. But they need an offensive line help. They need a safety. Carolina, interesting here to see what they do.
Yeah, I think they can pick up a few different people. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what the teams above them do. They certainly need some defensive help. They need some pass rushers. But again, I don't know when you start getting down to the 16th pick if they've got some elite pass rushers that they feel are worth that position in the draft. And so I think there will be some solid safeties there. I think there will be some solid cornerbacks there. They do need some interior line play and some interior line help as well. That lends for some flexibility so they can do different things and move some guys around. So I think they've got some potential there. Of course, you can always look for a wide receiver. Any help you can give on the offensive side to help Cam Newton out, where he can stay back in the pocket and quit running around and getting murdered, by the other opposing defenses. I think that helps the situation too. So if there's a good wide receiver out there, I think they look at that. I don't know if there's going to be a dominant interior defensive lineman left that is a big play guy right away that can step in to that scheme. So I don't know if that's there unless someone falls down that far in the draft.
Great. Hey, we'd like to thank everybody again for joining us here at Main Street Sports Bar tonight. And for those of you online, appreciate you joining the live stream as well. Smash that reaction button, that like, or that haha button, or that or angry button or whatever you feel like. Just smash that reaction button. Leave some comments. If you have a question, we will try to answer the questions as well as they come through tonight on the live stream. So appreciate that. We got some great looking folks out in the audience tonight, and expecting some more to come down here, and appreciate everybody for coming down. Let's wrap this up, and we'll head into some Vikings talk before we take a break. Pick number 17, what would be their second pick of the draft, the New York Giants. Once again here, the Giants are rebuilding. They've got a lot of help on. They need help at the quarterback position. They definitely need some help on the defensive side of the ball. They don't need a running back. They have Saquon Barkley. He was pretty good last year. That was a nice pick. Former Vikings offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur is now the head coach over there. He's going into his second year with the Giants, and the Giants are fortunate. They've got 2 first-round picks. That's a lot of draft capital. In the first 17 picks. What do you think?
So here's what I like. If all things stay equal and teams aren't moving up to get quarterbacks, with the number 6 pick with the Giants, I like them picking up Jawan out of Florida. I think he fits in well, Jawan Taylor. I think he fits in well. He is an anchor guy. He's probably, as some people say, the most kind of polished tackle that's out there. Physical size, can move well, around the edge. Is a fierce guy that buries people on the defense side. I think you can shore up your offensive tackle on the left side with that play. And then at the 17th pick, I think Dwayne Haskins will be there, assuming people don't move up to get him. Washington doesn't move up. And so I think that's a good parlay. Now, if you don't want to take that chance, then a quarterback that you maybe like, whether it's him or Locke, then maybe pick him up with the 6th pick. But I think there's some strong candidates at the 6th, and I think those quarterbacks with the needs above them, I think there's a couple quarterbacks there that I think that would be well for the Giants. So we'll see how that plays out.
I actually have them taking a cornerback here.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I have them taking Greedy Williams here. I think Jawan Taylor is long gone by this time. It's my personal opinion. I think they might even take him at 5 or 6. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah. So I think this could be where we could be looking at cornerback for them, not quarterback, cornerback. We've talked about quarterback for them already. They have a need, but again, you're probably going to get a year or 2 out of Eli Manning, but interesting to see what they do there. So that leads us to our pick, which will be happening. We're slated to pick number 18, and we're probably looking at 9:15, 9:30 Central here is what I'm guessing. We're going to take you right up to that pick. We're going to be broadcasting live until the Vikings pick tonight. And after that, we will wrap up and end our broadcast. But we've got a lot to talk about. So we're probably about just a few minutes aside of the break here. Do you want to get into anything, or do we have enough time to talk about where the Vikings are at from their depth chart, or should we take a quick break?
We can take a quick break and come back. Do a little pause here.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. We will put the break up on the screen so you know that we're coming back. And we'll be back with you here in about 5 minutes. Stay tuned. Don't leave. Check, check, check. Can you hear us? Is that better? Loud? Down? Okay. Hey, if you're on the live stream, also, can you hear us? Will you give us a thumbs up that we've got the audio on the live stream as well and that you're able to hear us? I know there's a lot of background noise. We're here at Main Street Sports Bar, but I appreciate you if you're on the live stream, just give us a confirmation that we're good. Maybe with a comment. We did a little couple of audio adjustments here, so appreciate you bearing with us. Check, check, check. We'll be back with you here in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
They got Jawan Taylor going to the Lions. See, the comments won't come up, huh?
I'm afraid because if I refresh this.
What's going on? We're live streaming the draft tonight. So we're going to go through the Vikings 18 picks. We've been talking about the different teams and what their needs are. And we're going to talk about the Vikings now. So we got. Yeah, Wednesday was nice out today, wasn't it? Beautiful. It's coming out of the north too, wasn't it? Yeah, you had to wear it. Yeah, the sun was out. It looked nice until you got in that wind, and then it was a little cool. How'd you golf? Good out to sea or quick short game? Good out to sea. That'll come around. There's a lot of people out there. So what time is draft starts at 7 and we start at 5 minutes. You ready? Should we answer Donnie's question?
Yeah. All right.
Check.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Check.
Out in the audience there, you can hear us okay? Good? Perfect.
How about me? Good?
And if you're on the stream and if you have an audio issue, just definitely let us know, and we will do our best to continue correcting that as well. So appreciate everybody bearing with us on the audio issues for the first segment there. We had a couple of questions come through the comments that we didn't see initially. So one from Don DeMeyer out of Hutchinson. What's the over and under on the number of offensive linemen the Vikings are going to draft this weekend? So I'm going to tell you right now, here's my answer to that. They are going to draft with 2 of the first 3 picks in this draft.
And you're sure about that?
Will be offensive linemen.
You positive?
Yeah, I'm positive. Yeah. I'm almost certain. I'm going with offensive linemen at pick 18. They actually need help at cornerback. So I think that...
Not quarterback?
They don't need any help at quarterback. So I'm thinking cornerback. And so that's where I'm at on that. I think offensive line, 2 of the first 3 picks for the Vikings.
So what's your over and under? You think they're going to pick up more than 2 or less than... More than 2? Or 2 or less than 2?
More than 2. Yeah,
more than 2.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
My over and under is 2, and I think they'll pick up 2 of the rounds. 3. I don't know if they'll pick up 3. I think it depends who's left in the draft on the second and third days, but they definitely need some help there. But when we get to the Vikings pick, I've got a great pick that will actually move 2 guys around on the line that maybe then allows us not to pick up 1 guy.
Great. Perfect. And again, we're continuing to adjust the audio as things change here. So let us know if you can't hear us, and let us know if everything is good. So appreciate it. We're looking for feedback. All right, the draft's about to begin. The commissioner is going to be out in probably a couple minutes, and he's going to announce that the draft is open. So the Cardinals will be on the clock, and we'll analyze that a little bit, but we'll also start talking about where the Vikings are at from their perspective. So let's definitely let's get into that. So taking a look at the Vikings, where they're at, I think we've talked about it. It's been exhausted in the media and all over the place. Offensive line. I think that's the clear number 1 need of this team. I mean, it would have to be a scenario where a dream player falls to them. You know, looking at again, I've brought his name up a few times, like an Ed Oliver or somebody like that just falls to 18 for some reason. That's the only way I see them picking defense with the first pick. Otherwise, I feel like it's going to be that for sure.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you too. In the first round, for sure, the first couple rounds. I mean, I think the challenge then, I totally agree with you. Unless one of the guy that has the best skill set, it's about which guy sometimes will fit the scheme that you're looking to run. So with that zone blocking scheme, I think your challenge with looking for a guy that can move into space, a little more agile, can run, versus the kind of ground and pound and the gap kind of blocking scheme where you're just looking for big maulers, right, coming in there and just pushing guys out of the gap and running. And so I think that'll be where they decide is which guys are out there that are going to fit our scheme and come in right away and play.
So let's talk about that zone blocking scheme for a minute. Let's talk about what Gary Kubiak has brought in to the Vikings with the offensive kind of coordinator here. He's not the offensive coordinator. That's Kevin Stefanski. But talking about Gary Kubiak, he is more of an offensive advisor, I would say. He is more of that. He's going to be kind of that mentor to Stefanski. He's going to kind of help drive the concepts that Mike Zimmer wants to see in this offense, and help Kevin Stefanski along. And I've said this before, Mike Zimmer does not have a problem with bringing in head coaches into his room as his assistants. Typically, you would think in like a hierarchy of things, if you've been a head coach, you maybe have a hard time coming in and being underneath a head coach. But I think Mike Zimmer is he's just kind of a no BS guy. He just wants to say it like it is. And he's brought in some of these guys, and he's been successful. You look at Pat Shermer, you look at Tony Sperano, former head coaches, and I just look at those guys, and I'm bringing in like a Gary Kubiak. He won Super Bowl 50 for the Denver Broncos. I think he's a good addition to this offensive staff, and I think just as much as a free agent pickup or a draft pick, he's as valuable of a pickup for the Vikings as one of those.
I certainly agree, and I think what you're touching on is he doesn't have an ego. At the end of the day, he wants to put the best product out there on the field, and he wants to win, and he wants his players to be devoted, and he wants his players to buy into the concepts and the things that will make that team good, buying into the culture. But that only starts if you're emulating what you're asking the players to do, right? And so that's a smart way to run an organization. A smart way to run a team is bring in guys that can make you better as a coaching staff and can make your players better and put the egos at the door. And that's what they're going to do. And I think it'll bode well this year. Of course, we'll see how it plays out in wins and losses this year. But I think the more people that have different viewpoints and different ideas on how to run certain schemes and can create matchups and move guys around, the better off you're going to be. So I'm excited to see what they do this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about the Vikings and their, you're kind of looking at more of like a West Coast type of offense, like you've talked about. You've touched on it before with the zone running and the zone blocking, getting those linemen out into space, not necessarily just plowing straight ahead and road grading the guy in front of them, using more athletic linemen in that regard. I think that's what the Vikings are looking at for this draft, specifically with pick number 18, an offensive lineman that is athletic, that can get out into space and can block a guy and take on a defender and make some of those screen plays and some of those types of things successful for them this season.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. The question that bolds in my mind is when we get to the 18th pick, assuming we don't move up or down in the draft, is there preference more on an offensive tackle or an interior lineman? Where do they see the greatest need moving forward? Now, again, we can talk about their current depth chart and roster spots. We can talk about some of the flexibility we have within our existing roster. I'm thinking of Pat Elflein, who has played center. He's come out and said publicly that he's more comfortable playing guard. He's played more there. He has more experience there. He's more comfortable there. So do you look for a guy in the draft, and I'm thinking of one in particular, that is the clear center in the draft, and one guy that has people are saying is a solid pick, that he will come in and start day one. He's got good feet, good hands, he moves well, he's a very intelligent player, he can block, he can get to the second level very quickly. And so do you bring him in as a true center and move Pat Elflein into a more comfortable position at guard? So with one pick, can you solidify two positions? Maybe where Pat Elflein's a little bit more comfortable in bringing in a true center, and we'll talk about that piece. Or do you look at an offensive tackle that says, hey, we need to stop the edge rushers coming to us, and we need to give Kirk Cousins more time, but let's talk
Absolutely.
about that. So.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely all things to be discussed, and we'll mash on that as we get more into our broadcast here. Once again, we're live from Main Street Sports Bar. We got a nice crowd out here so far. People are coming in, and just bear with us and appreciate you, and let us know if you're having any audio issues, and we'll do our best to resolve those. But appreciate you joining us tonight on the SkolCast. I know we actually had someone that commented on us that was from New Zealand. So watching from New Zealand, which is kind of cool. Didn't expect that, but we appreciate you joining, and it's awesome. So thanks a lot. So kind of diving in here to what some of the Vikings' needs are. I'm looking at, we've talked about it before exhaustively, interior offensive line, offensive tackle. Let's talk about the cornerback situation on the defensive side of the ball. Cornerback now. So let's take a look at who we have on the defensive side of the ball on the outside. We've got Xavier Rhodes. perennial Pro Bowler, All-Pro. We have Trey Waynes, who is in the 5th year of his rookie deal. He's entering the 5th year of his rookie deal. We have Mike Hughes, who left with an ACL injury last year.
Yep.
He's
Early in
out.
the season.
He was out. I did see this week now he's running, so that's good. That's a good sign.
And they say he's a little bit ahead of schedule.
A little ahead of schedule. Does that mean week 1? I don't know. We've got Holton Hill, who is an undrafted free agent. He's going into his 2nd year out of Texas. I liked what I saw out of Holton Hill last year on the corner position. Good anticipation, good hips. He was able to react to the ball. I think he had an interception in the Jets game. He's out on a 4-game suspension, so for the first 4 weeks of this season, he's out. And then I look at, we have Mackenzie Alexander in the slot, but on the nickel situation, Jeremy, we're a little thin at corner.
Yeah, and I think there's a few other things that potentially could play out. You know, we've talked in the past about the salary cap of the Vikings. You know, they've restructured some contracts. One of the guys that has been talked about as far as being able to move him and free up some salary cap to sign larger deals is Trey Waynes. But again, with Mike Hughes, is he going to be back healthy for the season, coming off an ACL? A lot of times those things, to get into game shape form, I mean, he's just starting to run now, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're on the field and you're asked to cover guys that are running 4-3, 4-4, and then turning on a dime. And so I would expect him to come back in a knee brace if he comes back. That will hinder a little bit of his mobility. And so I don't know that you can necessarily depend on him to be a solid backup for a good part of the season behind Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes. We've talked about Xavier Rhodes. What's he? He's 29. He's getting to be 30. So, again, by football standards, it's getting to be a little bit on the back end of age for those types of positions. And so, on paper, it looks like we have a lot of solid cornerbacks where we don't need to maybe necessarily address it this year. But there's some intangibles that you just don't really know if they're going to be in play this year. Is Xavier Rhodes going to get back to a little bit more solid caliber season compared to last year, which I know there was some criticism that Zimmer gave him about not always necessarily playing as consistent as they wanted him to be for the type of contract he has. And so I think if there's some cornerbacks out there, they're seriously going to look at those cornerbacks in the draft too, maybe 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. Some of the later rounds, if they've got some guys out there that can come in and give them time to develop behind some of the cornerbacks that we already have.
Absolutely. Well, and I look at that, everybody, and this is part of the conundrum that I think the NFL has created. And the commissioner is up there right now. I think they're just starting to open the draft, so we don't have a pick yet, but the draft is just starting. So the Cardinals are not. The Cardinals are not on the clock yet, are they? No. So we've got a little bit of time. So the NFL has created this conundrum with fans, with players, with everybody. They've put so much emphasis on round 1, having it be the big spectacle, the Thursday night deal. If you're selected in round 1, you go sit in the green room and you get to go to the location where the draft is. But I look, and that's all great, and you usually get quality players out of round 1, but I look at rounds 2, 3, and 4, and that is where the core of your team is actually built. You only have so many first-round picks in a draft. I mean, you might have, if you're the Giants or the Raiders, you might have 2 or 3. But I look at the Vikings and I go, you have 1 first-round pick. Rounds 2, 3, and 4 is where your team is going to be built for this year. You need to find starters in those rounds. You look at the offensive lineman Brian O'Neill out of Pittsburgh that they drafted last year. Everybody said, "Oh, he's raw. He's a project." I think is what they called him. He's going to take a while to develop. He solidified the right tackle position for them, and he's solidified, and he's a starter. He's in there in the starting right tackle position, and everybody's counting on him to start. So he's a big piece to that offensive line, and that's why I think as much emphasis as we're going to put on round 1 tonight, a lot more of the heavy lifting and the work is going to happen tomorrow night and Saturday.
I certainly agree with you. I think when you start getting those later rounds, that's where the teams that have done their due diligence, have done the extensive scouting, have watched these guys in college play, and have critiqued the little things about each player. That's where the hay is. That's where the hay is made, right? You can look across a lot of the teams in the NFL, and a lot of their line, particularly, and a lot of their star players aren't necessarily first-round players. It depends on the scheme that they're in. It depends how much time you're going to allow a player to develop. And if you have some patience for that, you can get some good value, particularly in the draft, in those later rounds. And I think you're going to see it again this year with receivers and running backs and some offensive linemen, that in those later rounds, you're going to get some solid NFL players. Do they necessarily step on the field week one and play? Not necessarily. But a couple games in, can they displace some of the other players out there? Can they do enough in the preseason and some of the training to prompt up and say, hey, now I'm into a starting position because I've proven myself? I think you can get that, and I think you will see some of that as well. So,
absolutely. So with that, the commissioner, Roger Goodell, has come to the podium, and he has opened the NFL draft live in Nashville. Let's talk about this. Arizona is on the clock. Everybody in the entire world is saying they're going to take Kyler Murray at number 1 at the quarterback position. Let me give you a piece of trivia here, Jeremy. Hold on. I got to find it. So, only once in the common draft era since 1966 has a team taken back-to-back first-round quarterbacks in the NFL draft. And that was the Baltimore Colts, who in 1983 drafted Art Schlichter, and in 1984 drafted John Elway. And then they traded him to the Denver Broncos, which I'm sure they regret. But so in 83 and 84, they drafted quarterbacks in the first round, and that's the only time it's happened since 1966. The Arizona Cardinals took Josh Rosen last year with number 1 with their first round pick. And now everybody's saying they're going to take Kyler Murray here with this pick that they're on the clock for. What do you think?
So to me, it boils down to this. If you're the Arizona Cardinals and you're the GM and you're the head coach who they've brought in this year, does Josh Rosen's package, the athletic ability, his arm, what you want him to do, fit the scheme that you're going to run? Cliff Kingsbury, by all practical purposes, is fairly young coach, fairly young to the different types of schemes that are out there. They certainly want to do more of a high prolific passing offense. So that's the question you have to ask yourself is, can Josh Rosen do what we want him to do in the scheme that we're going to run this year? If the answer is yes, then I don't think you pick up Kyler Murray. I think you draft a Nick Bosa, or you draft a Quinlan Williams, or you draft an immediate playmaker. If you say, yeah, he can do some things well, but he isn't going to be the best athlete on the field or the best player, and he can't move and run, and he can't break runs, and you have some hesitation, then I think you do pick Kyler Murray. And let's talk about that for a second. It's a win-win situation for both quarterbacks, right? In my mind. Kyler comes in, you're drafting Kyler Murray into a system that you think is going to best suit him and best suit the Arizona Cardinals. And you're going to move Josh Rosen to a team who is looking for a quarterback. And he can be a solid quarterback in the NFL. I think he can be a real solid quarterback. Do I think he's a transcending quarterback like I think Kyler Murray can be if he has Oklahoma-type seasons in the NFL and he can do some of the things he does? His upside is higher than Josh Rosen's. But that doesn't mean Josh Rosen doesn't go to another team, and that's a win situation for him as well, right? So I think it can be a win-win situation. So I think that'll be interesting when they draft what their process is.
So Dave Wallen on our chat asked the question, should the Vikings look to trade for Josh Rosen? first of all, we're going to find out if Josh Rosen is going to be available here in about 5 minutes. Second of all, there are 84 million reasons why the Vikings are not going to trade for Josh Rosen. I can tell you that right now.
Well,
but,
they hitched the wagon to him.
Yeah. But there's two things with this situation. The first one is Steve Keim, the general manager of Arizona, has been playing coy with the media over the last few weeks. He hasn't given away his hand. They very well may take Kyler Murray here in 5 minutes and 19 seconds, but do I think that they should? I do not think that they should. I think there's a playmaker like you mentioned in a Nick Bosa, a Quinnen Williams that can elevate that defense immediately. That would be a much better pick. And you see if you can, and you don't give up on Josh Rosen after year one with a first-year NFL coach that spent 5 weeks at USC. Now, I know that he's got other coaching experience, and I know that's the trend in the NFL is to go with the younger coaches. But do I think the Cardinals should take him? No. Will they? Maybe.
That's a political answer. Yeah, again, I think it comes down to who do you think best fits the scheme that you're looking to run? If you think Kyle Murray's the guy and he's got all the tangibles that you want to really elevate that offensive side of the ball, and it's a tick above Rosen, I think that happens. If you think Josh Rosen can be a solid quarterback for you, then there's a consideration there. And I'm sure they've talked about that. That's a consideration they're going to have is which way do we go? I do think they're going to get value for Josh Rosen.
For sure.
So
For sure. Well, there's about 3:58 left in the Cardinals. They're on the clock. And the pick is not officially in yet. They're showing we can't actually show the draft on here because of copyright, so we don't want to violate any copyright laws, but they were showing the Cardinals war room. They look pretty relaxed right now. I'm pretty sure they know what they're doing. They probably already submitted the pick, and they're on their way, so we'll find that out here shortly. But, yeah.
Yeah, the other question that came from Dave Wolin, too, is would the Vikings consider drafting Greedy Williams, cornerback out of LSU, and trade Trey Waynes? I think they would consider that. I don't think he's going to be there at the 18th pick.
I agree.
He's the number one cornerback on the list. And so 17 picks to take a lockdown cornerback that's got length, agility, can move well, is a shutdown cornerback. I don't think he's there. If he's there, I think you consider that over maybe an offensive lineman. Again, to address the needs that you talked about.
For sure. So, taking a look at this while we wait for the Cardinals pick to come in, and when the commissioner comes to the podium, we won't announce it, we won't stop, but we will pause and announce the pick, and then we'll continue on with some analysis. But from that perspective, we kind of got into the quarterbacks for a second because we were talking about Josh Rosen. Dave asked the question about us trading for Josh Rosen. I said that there were 84 million reasons why we wouldn't. Let's talk quarterback for 2 seconds here while we wait for the pick to come in. We're obviously, our like you said, our wagons are hitched to Kirk Cousins. We're gonna ride him as far as we can. Hopefully he had a great season last season. I know there's a lot of statistically a great season. He had some key turnovers in some spots that killed us in some games. Those fumbles against Buffalo, the interception against New Orleans specifically come to mind. I know the New Orleans interception wasn't necessarily his fault. I think Stephon Diggs maybe broke off a route or ran a wrong route or something. But so our wagons are hitched to Kirk Cousins. But our last couple of we've got a couple new backup quarterbacks, and we've signed Sean Mannion from the Rams. I don't know if he's a competition, if he's going to be in competition with Kyle Sloter, or what their thoughts are on Kyle Sloter, who has been kind of the third string quarterback for a number of years, or for a couple years now, out of Denver. He's raw. He's got more of that mobile ability. I think even he's more mobile than like a Kirk Cousins is. But he's more of a project. He's more of a, at this point, if you get to a point where you're playing Kyle Sloter, I think you might be in trouble. So are the Vikings going to take a quarterback in this draft, do you think?
I don't think it's certainly off the board. I think if there's good value there in a later round, that's not a pressing need for them. I think they certainly can do that. Right now, I think Kyle Sloter, he's slotted as the number 2 guy behind Kirk Cousins. Sean Mannion, I mean, are both of those guys serviceable if Kirk Cousins goes down? Yes, they are. But if there's a good quarterback out there that they think is going to be someone that they can work with for the next 3, 4, 5 years and get him in a good position developmental-wise to back up Kirk Cousins and eventually take over that position, assuming that over those years that someone else in the draft doesn't come up that you really like, then I think you look at that. But I don't think they're going to jump up to get a quarterback at this stage in the draft, at least for 2019. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. The Cardinals' pick is in, so the commissioner will be up here shortly to announce that, and we will see. All the dominoes will fall from there, won't they?
So your pick is they do not go with Kyle Murray.
They probably are going to, but
I'm changing your tune now.
They're probably going to, but I'm going to say that they're not. I would like to see them draft Nick Bosa, but we'll see if they draft Kyler Murray here. The commissioner's coming to the podium. He's going to announce the selection, and we'll see who it is here in just a second. So they took him.
Yep.
So there he is. Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is the pick for the Cardinals. The 5'10", 1/8.
There's guys that don't like that pick in the draft. Hey, who benefits the most from that? San Francisco 49ers, right? And the Jets. Right.
So Kyler Murray goes to the Cardinals. I think that's a mistake in my book. You have lost all ability to negotiate with teams. I feel like for Josh Rosen, you've lost some value with him there now, taking Kyler Murray. But you know what? That's what they got to do. They got a new coach in Cliff Kingsbury. Good for them. Kyler Murray is going to the Cardinals.
Yeah, and again, to me, it boils down to they just think he is a better playmaker. When you look at the total package, he's a guy that's going to be able to elevate their offensive schemes and systems to a higher level than Josh Rosen will. The upside they perceive as better there. Not that Josh Rosen, again, isn't going to be a good quarterback and a solid quarterback in the NFL. He probably will be on a different team. I do agree with you. I think they do diminish a little bit of his value. I think if they look to try to trade him, which they're going to look to move him fairly quickly now because that creates a cultural issue in the locker room to have 2 first-round picks there. I don't see a trade. If you're doing a strict trade, I don't see that trade being anything higher than at least a round 2 or lower because people aren't going to give you anything. They're not going to give you a first-round pick.
Nope, they lost some value there. So for those of you draft geeks out there, one of the websites that I follow, Jeremy, I'll mention it to you here too. It's drafttech.com, drafttek.com. So they have predictions and analysis on what the next pick will be. So based on their on their analysis and on their actual re-simulated results. So it's a cool website, drafttech.com. They're showing, so San Francisco's on the clock. They're showing what we all think is that's a given now. Nick Bosa, I think, for this pick, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think the biggest winners in that is the San Francisco 49ers, right? He probably, maybe he's there. Maybe they take Quinlan Williams, number 1, if they don't take Kyler Murray. But either way, I think the next couple guys are fairly locked. Let me pose this question to you, Dave. We'll put that out there. If you could get Josh Rosen as a second backup to the Vikings at in a reasonable situation, would you consider that? Now, again, some of the predication is that he's willing to be a backup, which when you're a first-round pick, maybe you're not necessarily wanting to do that.
Well, there's been other first-round picks like Alex Smith that have been backup quarterbacks for a while, and look at how they've flourished. So there's definitely an option there. Dave Wallen, again, just asked another question on the chat, and very similar to what you just answered. So San Francisco's on the clock. Let's get back to the Vikings. So let's talk about from the on the offensive side of the ball, what some of our other needs are outside of the offensive line, which we know is a glaring need, which we know is a likely pick for us. We're taking a look at the offensive line, but some of the other needs that we have, we lost Sheldon Richardson in free agency. We still have Linval Joseph. We picked up Shamar Steffen. I think we have a need for an interior defensive lineman as well in this draft. We've already talked about cornerback on the defensive side of the ball a little bit. We can talk about some more names as the draft proceeds here. But I think we have a need for an interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, I think that would help bolster the interior there. I think Shamir Steffen, I think he'll be a serviceable guy. I think he'll play consistent at times. I mean, there's a reason why we let him go and why Seattle kind of let him go. I don't think he's a dominant playmaker like Sheldon Richardson was, back in the day. And even last year, Sheldon Richardson had some real solid games, and then some games where you didn't really know he was there. I mean, he couldn't at times get off a single team block, off a single blocks versus double teams. So the question for me is, will there be an interior defensive lineman that can bolster our lineup more than what we have now later in the draft? Or do they consider taking an interior lineman at the 18th pick? Knowing that there's maybe going to be more depth at the offensive side of the ball in the second and third rounds.
That's correct.
It's a trade-off, right?
It is a trade-off. So Rick Spielman also said, we're going back to cornerback for a second. The quote was, his wife said to him, if you
I saw that.
draft a cornerback, don't bother coming home that night.
Yep.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I did too. And she probably meant it too, right?
I think she meant it. This team has a need for offensive line, and we know we've talked about corner, but I don't think we have a need for corner at pick 18 there, for sure.
A couple of areas that we also need, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, is they do need a third legitimate offensive weapon at receiver, whether it's receiver, tight end. And let's go to the 49ers selection here. We'll come back to the receivers for the
Perfect.
Vikings.
Commissioners at the podium making the 49ers selection. And it looks like it is Nick Bosa, the defensive end out of Ohio State, the brother of Joey Bosa, who plays for the Chargers. They're the beneficiaries of that for sure.
I think I am faster than him.
For those of you on the live stream, we have a table of jokers here at the bar. We've got and of course they're hiding out in the corner. We got the Anthony Hansons of the world, and we got the. That's true. This table over here is pretty decent. We've got the DeMeyers and the Alberts.
Well, those guys are used to sitting in the corner at home too. So I mean, it's a perfect role
true.
for them down at the bar. So
That's true. Notice at the second table, I didn't mention another person who is an actual joker. So
that's a solid pick.
It
49ers,
is.
solid pick. Nick Bosa. He's going to come in and be an edge rusher, playmaker right away. They've got one interior defensive lineman that's good, and a pass rusher on the opposite side of the ball. So immediate impact player.
Absolutely. The Jets are on the clock. This pick is interesting. I've got them drafting Quinnen Williams here.
That's who I got too.
Yeah, I think we talked about this earlier, so we won't dwell on what the Jets need and don't need, but let's get back to kind of our depth chart and where we're looking at for our stuff. So we've talked about corner, we've talked about we were just talking about the defensive line. Let's review the tight end position for a minute. There are some high-end tight ends in this draft. We've got specifically the two out of Iowa, Noah Fant and T.J. Hawkinson, that are going to go fairly high in this draft. We've got Kyle Rudolph. We've got David Morgan at tight end. We also have a kid, Tyler Conklin. He caught a couple passes last year.
He did.
You know, tight end is an interesting one for me. I think we have some decent talent at tight end. You know, I think we could use some help there. Kyle Rudolph is expensive. Kyle Rudolph also kind of flashed in the pan. He flashes in the pan sometimes. I feel like Kyle Rudolph disappeared for the first part of last year in John DeFilippo's offense a little bit. I don't remember him. I know he caught a couple touchdowns there, but I feel like he flourished later on in the season. I have to look back at the stats, but
He had the big game against Detroit Lions.
yeah, the big game. Yep. We definitely could use some help at tight end there. I don't see us taking a tight end in this first round here, but later on in this draft, if there's a tight end that we maybe have our eyes on, I could see that.
Yeah, I certainly looked at the tight end class. I think you hit the top two, from Iowa. Hawkinson and Fant are there. I think Irv Smith Jr. from Alabama is right up there with them too. I think those three outside of those three, I think there's a little bit of gap and a little bit of separation from some of the other guys like Chase Sternberger and Dax Raymond from Utah State and Khalil Warning from San Diego State. And so for legitimate playmakers at tight end that can come in the first season, you're probably down to those three guys. But you do have some luxury with Kyle Rudolph. He's still got some tread on the tires. You know, he can play another year or two. So if you really want to look to bring someone in that you can develop, again, as long as they have the athletic intangibles and they've got some of the things that you're looking for, you can take a little bit of time to get someone like that up to speed on the offense. So I think they'll look at that. I don't think they're going to do any dramatic changes or shifts up and down the draft board to acquire a tight end, but if someone's certainly out there, they'll certainly look at that piece. And then I think the receiver, again, we've talked about that in the past. Outside of Thielen and Diggs, we don't really have a solid third receiver that scares any defense, that you can line up in trips or you can line up in a four-receiver formation and really put the pressure on another team's secondary to do some things. And I think there's some real good receivers out there. We talked a little bit of DK Metcalf. Probably won't be around there in some of the late-round picks that we have for the Vikings. But you've got guys like Kelvin Harmon from NC State. You got Deebo Samuel from South Carolina. N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. Different things that I've read, different drafts that are out there, they got him going fairly high, but then also potentially being there in the second and third round pick that's got some real good skill. A.J. Brown, Marquise Brown. I like Riley Ridley from Georgia. I think he'll be there in a later round that we could pick up. He was kind of their number one receiver at Georgia. He didn't quite fare as high in some of the combine statistics, but was a solid receiver there. Could run the inside slot, could do a lot of different things, had good hands, and so I think they'll look at some of those guys too and go, is there a guy that we can parlay with Diggs and Thielen in a three-receiver set? Because I think they will run quite a bit of that. So
Cool.
There's a need there too.
Yeah. Hey, I think we should do a giveaway. Do you think we should?
Let's do it.
Let's give something away.
I got a question.
I got a question.
All right.
Anybody want to answer it? Nobody wants to answer it. Nobody wants a giveaway, huh? All right. Not even those jokers in the corner. They don't want to have any. They don't want a giveaway.
Maybe
huh?
they're scared to answer the question.
I don't know if anybody wants a giveaway. I got a question to ask, and here's the question. In 20 2013, the Vikings had 3 first-round draft choices. In 2013, the Vikings had 3 first-round draft choices, and only one of them is still with the team. Who is it?
Ooh. He didn't even start out with an easy question. He gave you a hard one. In
gave you a hard-
2013, the Vikings had 3 first-round draft picks. What one player is still on the roster today?
No, you cannot open up your phone.
You can ask Siri. It just depends who's there fast enough.
Tell you what.
Do you know the answer? No?
I'll give you the 2 other ones that are no longer on the team. At pick 23, we picked Sharif Floyd. He's no longer on the team. And at pick 29, we picked Cordero Patterson. He's no longer on the team as well. We picked this guy at pick 25. No. No. Yes.
Oh, hey. I wasn't sure if you're just grasping at straws there or pulling them out of the hat or what.
Whoever answered Xavier Rhodes gets a T-shirt. Just what she always wanted. A T-shirt.
Xavier Rhodes.
Sweet.
It would have to be your wife, too.
It would be. Yeah. Just what she always wanted, a SkolCast T-shirt.
That's because she is a staunch Vikings fan.
That's true. Yeah, you have to come pick it out. Oh, okay.
No, you got to come get it now. 0. One of 2 options, I think. Quinlan Williams, or they move down.
This is going to be Quinn and Williams here.
That's what I think. The only way they move down, Redskins maybe moves up, but
I wouldn't give up Quinn and Williams.
No, this is Quinn and Williams. Hey, we're going to do more trivia later, so hang out. And I'll try to ask a little bit easier questions next time.
No,
It would be my wife that answers it correctly, but
multiple choice and D, all the above.
did she look it up on her phone? I was gonna give a hint and say X marks the spot, but
Yeah. How do you pass up on that guy?
so the Jets just made their selection, and it is Quinn and Williams, the interior defensive lineman out of Alabama, an absolute stud. They are set for that position. That's a great pick for them. Solidify the interior of their defensive line.
He has been compared to Donald.
To Aaron Donald.
Yeah. Now, what do you think of that? I think he's got the attributes like Donald. I don't know if I would necessarily put him in that class yet. I think Aaron Donald is maybe a little bit more elusive, a little bit better with the hips and a little bit more power. But do you think he has the ability to get to that level?
For sure. Yeah, I think he does. I think. And I never liked that, comparing it to a current player who is an all-pro. I mean, you look at an Aaron Donald and you go, all-pro, unblockable at times, a defense wrecker, just like a Khalil Mack in a way. But if this guy flashes, if this guy is anywhere near that, he's a monster. They're showing his tape right now. He also eluded his offensive lineman there. He sacked the quarterback multiple times. In this example, they had him triple teamed, and he beat the triple team. Absolutely, dominant.
A piece that amazed me with some of these guys coming out of college and some of these elite guys is how big they are and how fast they are.
For sure.
You're looking at a tape of a guy like that that's 300 pounds, that's running around like he's a linebacker. It's just absolutely amazing what those guys can do.
Absolutely.
So, there you go. The Jets with the 3rd pick, Quinton Williams. That's to me is a sure lock, right? That's a sure, safe pick. When I mean safe pick, I mean that in the best possible way. He's a guy that's a plug and play guy. You put him right into the interior defensive line, and he is a starter game 1. and he is a playmaker day one. And so, great pick for those guys.
Well, this is where it kind of gets interesting for me if we start looking at the Oakland Raiders. We talked about the needs earlier when we were previewing everything in the 6 o'clock hour, and the Raiders have a lot of needs. I said that they even maybe have a need at quarterback. I don't know if John Gruden sold on David Carr, but I don't think this is not going to be a quarterback for me for the Raiders here. I'm looking at a defensive player for them. I think this is going to be this could be a Josh Allen or a Brian Burns here for me on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I have these guys picking Josh Allen. I think outside of Nick Bosa and Quinnen Williams, I think this guy from Kentucky, he's explosive. He's an edge rusher. He's explosive. He's got good balance, stability. He's got good hands. The one thing I would say maybe is from a size-wise, maybe a little bit smaller than a Nick Bosa and a Quinnen Williams, but has all the tangibles that you want. He's going to be a playmaker out there as an edge rusher, and so to me that's a logical choice for the Raiders. They do have to replace, Khalil Mack and some of those guys on the defensive side that they've moved on, and so you can tool up some of your offense and bring in an Antonio Brown and bring in some of those guys, but you also need to shore up some of your defensive side, and I think this guy fits well in what they try to do out there. So that's who I have them picking is Josh Allen from Kentucky.
For sure. Yep. No, I'm with you there. I think that's what I think the pick is, but we will see here in just a few minutes what that is. The website that I referenced earlier, drafttech.com, they do the predictive analysis on it. They actually have Josh Allen for this pick as well. So that's where they're at. This is not a mock draft. This is live. They update this live. And
based on the picks that go before them.
Based on the picks that go before them. This is one call out from a buddy of mine, Brendan Anderson. He uses this as his resource every year, and this is the one that he follows. So drafttech.com, good website if you're kind of a draft junkie. We're going to take you through. I think we're going to take a break. Should we take a break for a couple minutes?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to take a break. We're going to talk to some of the jokers, mingle with some of the crowd, get another cocktail, and we'll be back with you here in about 5 minutes. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with you. Don't leave the broadcast. We'll see you shortly.
You guys are out of here. There goes SkolCast in 5 minutes. It's coming back at squad car.
Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, check. Check.
All right, Chad, come up. Chad, we'll bring you up. Come on up.
Hi, Chris.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, got to make sure that the right team is on the clock here. Hold on one second. We're going to return ourselves back here. We're going to go on the clock. The Buccaneers are on the clock right now. While we were away, the Oakland Raiders picked Cleveland Farrell out of Clemson. So that was a nice pickup for them. You can go ahead and put the headset on if you want.
I don't think it's on.
You're fine. The only thing you can hear is voices in there. So it's not very. You're good. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SkolCast. Special guest, local celebrity, Mr. Chad Chizmowski.
Thanks for having me tonight, Chris.
Yeah, you bet. Really, and you're gonna have to kiss the microphone when you talk, so make sure you're written right in there.
Noted.
So you can pull it up too if you want. So, so Chad, this this has been a long time coming. You and I talked about this months ago about about you being on the SkolCast here, and I mean,
over one of our many sushi lunches, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, it's got to be just an honor for you. I mean, is this like, other than marrying the love of your life, I mean, is this the biggest thing that has ever happened?
Ranks right up there, Chris. I'm honored. I'm under the understanding I'm the first guest that's ever been on SkolCast. Is that accurate?
You are the actual first guest, other than Jeremy and I, the actual special guests or guest appearances to be on the SkolCast. It's an honor.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm very honored. I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Chad Chizmowski is the owner of a local bike shop in town here, Outdoor Motion in Hutchinson, Minnesota, right here on Main Street. I've known him for just like a couple of years, and times like 10, and we're good friends, and we do have, like he alluded to, we have sushi lunches, usually weekly. So it's very good. So, so Chad, kind of tell me about your Vikings fandom and where you're at with being a Vikings fan and some of those kinds of things.
I'd love to. So, I grew up in Minnesota, so I always say I'm a lifelong Vikings fan, and I've had a couple of hiatuses from Vikings fandom, of course. I was a freshman at the University of North Dakota in 1998, and, at the end of that season, I experienced the heartbreak that we all did. It was
obviously
brutal. And I swore to myself I couldn't ride this emotional roller coaster anymore. And I actually quit watching the team in a serious way for many years until the year that they had Favre and we were going to go to the Super Bowl. And that year I didn't even watch a single game, and I was aware that they were good, and I was aware we may go to the Super Bowl. And that day I purposely went cross-country skiing to avoid the game because I figured I'd get reeled back in. And I went, and my mom called me on my way home, and she's like, Chad, we put some chili on. Why don't you come out and watch the game? And then I went out there, and they had the game on in the background, and I noticed, hey, we're one drive away from the Super Bowl here. And so, Favre did what he did and threw a pick. And I jumped up in the air and slammed my hands on the ground so hard in my parents' living room that I hurt my back.
Nice.
Yeah,
there's nothing better than that. I recall that game as well, the 2009 NFC Championship game against the New Orleans Saints, and I virtually did not sleep that night.
Sure.
I was so upset with it, and I know what you feel, and that's why sometimes as Vikings fans, we have to either do like you did, and we have to walk away.
Yeah.
Or you have to know that you're going to go through an emotional roller coaster and abuse like we do. So
since then, I think I've developed a healthy relationship with the team where I follow it, and when the highs, I'm happy for you and Jeremy because I know you guys are super fans, but, I try not to get too emotionally invested in this thing, and, I pay attention, I read about what they're doing, I watch a game if it's on, but, I just can't fall in love with them like I was, but, I'm happy for you guys when it happens, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, I do recall one of our memories together, Chad. So prior to me, meeting the love of my life, I lived as a bachelor in a condo here in town.
Yeah.
And I think you came over and watched a game with me.
I believe so.
Yeah, and so we were hanging out. We're like, hey, we're watching this Vikings game. And all I remember from that game is Troy Williamson, the wide receiver, had the ball.
Hit his face.
It literally hit his face.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that you and I went berserk. We went insane.
Yeah, I had a seizure.
Yeah, you had a seizure, and I probably went out on the balcony and wanted to jump off it or something. It was absolutely insane. the guy could not catch a football. When the ball hit him in the face, that was like the penultimate. It was like the ultimate Troy Williamson moment.
Yeah, it kind of solidified his place as one of the worst first-round draft picks in franchise history.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now I know there is one story that you want to talk about as far as a past Viking, possibly a fullback that related to the Vikings.
Sure. So I have a mild connection with the NFL draft. I, of course, went to the University of North Dakota in the late 90s, as did a one Jim Kleinsasser. And
Yes.
he, back then, UND was in Division II, and Jimbo would line up at every skill position but quarterback. And he was essentially like the Tecmo Super Bowl Bo Jackson of Division II football back then. One of my fondest college memories is him beating North Dakota State on a post pattern in the Fargo Dome. And
Nice.
I'm sure you remember the play, because that's the play that they showed whenever he would be talked about being drafted. You know, because he looked like he was a real burner, but
Right,
he's
right.
burning some D2 guys from North Dakota State. So,
Right, yeah.
But one time he was getting ready for the NFL draft, and North Dakota had two weight rooms. One was for students, one was for athletes, and for some reason Jim was lifting in the student weight room where me and my college mate Pete Anderson, good Hutch Tiger.
Nice.
Yeah, we were also lifting weights, and when Jim walked in, he's like Grand Forks Jesus at the time.
Right.
And everybody's pretending to lift weights, but everybody's watching Jim because he's 3 times the size of everybody else, and that's the way it was on campus. If he's walking there, what's that guy doing?
Yeah.
And he's on the bench. He's got 225, getting ready for the combine. And I don't know how many times he did it, but I was tired from watching him. He had to have been over 30.
Right.
And then back then he was a little leaner guy. They bulked him up in the NFL, but. Little known fact is he's a state record holder in the state of North Dakota in the 4x100.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Yeah, and it was in Class B. He went to Carrington High School, of course.
Wow.
A little town just outside of Grand Forks. But, he was kind of a burner back then. They bulked him up in the NFL, and, of course, everybody's fast in the NFL, so he didn't look as fast. But
Right.
at UND and at Carrington High, he was a
That's
burner.
awesome.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So I've talked to one or two people about him, and when they've interacted with him on different occasions, they said he is just the nicest guy you'd ever meet.
Yeah, that's his reputation in Grand Forks. He's
Yeah.
a super nice guy. And, one time for Parents Weekend, my parents were up visiting me, and this gorilla of a guy walks in, and he had to been 6'5", almost 300 pounds, and everybody in the restaurant like, who's this guy? On the back, he had one of those satin, baseball jackets on the back.
Yeah.
Kleinsasser. It must have been his dad.
Oh, awesome.
He was just as big, but
That's
he looked
awesome.
just like him. So,
That's
and his
awesome.
sister Sherry is in the UND Hall of Fame for basketball. So
Nice. This is
kind of runs
awesome.
in the family.
This is awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on and
Sure.
telling your couple stories and just
Sure.
kind of rehashing it over again, and this is great. So, whose question? Oh, is it on the leave a comment? Oh, gosh, you better look at it here. Oh, Lordy. Let's see. Don DeMeyer from Hutchinson has a
Yes.
question for you. So, I know you're a Viking super fan. What was your favorite moment from last year?
Last year, I'm going to be real honest, there weren't a lot of happy moments, Chris.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah, I mean, the team, if they weren't the most underachieving team in the NFL, I'd like
Correct.
to know who was.
Yeah, absolutely.
My favorite memory from last year, though, I'll speak about that. So I was watching the game, the second to the last game of the season, of course, and I know you guys were at the game, season ticket holders, and towards the end of the game, the Vikings kind of dropping a turd, and I texted you, I was like, those effing Vikings did it again.
Yeah.
And then 14 seconds later, the Minneapolis Miracle happened,
Yeah.
and I had to eat my words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously for all of us, the Minneapolis Miracle is a night we won't ever forget. It was myself and my wife and my co-host Jeremy and his wife, Bethany, and then we also had a couple other friends that were in the seats next to us, Adam Fink and Matt Hypenen, and Sarah, my wife, literally had her jacket was on.
Yeah.
I sit on the end of the aisle of our row, and we're ready to go, and there's 10 seconds to go,
Yeah.
and she had her jacket on. And I'm like, this is over. This is absolutely insane. It's another Vikings playoff loss.
Another
and then-
heartbreaker.
Another heartbreaker, and then the Minneapolis Miracle happens, and yeah, absolutely crazy how that works out. I'll never forget that. But
I had to eat my words. I
you
was
did.
happy.
You had to eat your words. So
Yeah, I was screaming
Yeah.
in my living room. Betsy was like, "What the hell's going on in there?" I was like, "You gotta get in here. You're not gonna believe this."
exactly, and yeah, no, that's great. So,
Perfect.
well, awesome. Hey, I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for
and,
having me.
And for coming on, we're gonna give you a complimentary SkolCast T-shirt.
Wow, I can't wait to wear it tomorrow to work. Thank you.
You bet. You could pick out the size back here, and we've got pick one out. And appreciate you coming on and being a
Perfect.
guest of ours.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. Everybody, Chad Chizmowski, everybody. So we're going to get back to the draft here.
Jokester.
We've had a couple of picks that have happened since we left you. I'm trying to pull them up here. The New York Giants, and I don't have the. We talked about the Raiders pick. I don't recall the Buccaneers pick, but the New York Giants just selected the quarterback from Duke.
That's hard to believe.
Daniel Jones, the quarterback from Duke, is the New York Giants selection at pick number 6. Absolutely, that I did not see that coming at all. I had them taking an offensive tackle, Jawan Taylor. Jawan Taylor is still on the board, right?
Yeah, he is. Yep. So
and-
the interesting part about picking him was he was the one that people said most resembled Eli Manning's attributes. And we all know Dave Gettleberg likes Eli Manning. So on the one hand, to me it's a shock that he's picked at number 6 when there's a couple other, I would say, more polished quarterbacks that most people had higher on the draft board than him. But on the flip side, if you love Eli Manning and you think he's the guy that can get you there, and you think this guy most resembles the qualities that he has, then I guess from that standpoint, it doesn't surprise me as well. So for me personally, it's shocking. I didn't have him going nearly
No.
that high in the draft.
No, I did not have Daniel Jones. I don't think I had him in the first round. And I had him graded out.
I had him early second.
On my big
Round.
board, I apologize, I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't have him in the top 50.
Probably the top 40, huh?
Top 40 of my big board right here. Yeah, so they see something in Daniel Jones that they like. If you'd have told me that a quarterback from Duke was going to be the number 6 pick in the NFL draft, I would have said you're crazy, but weirder things have happened, right?
I got him 4th on my depth chart.
For all the quarterbacks?
For quarterbacks. I got him behind Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, and Drew Lock. I think you can make a comparison between him and Will Grier as well. I mean, I think those two are fairly consistent. Will Grier's a quarterback from West Virginia, maybe in that second tier of quarterbacks. But for a 6th pick in the first round,
Right.
I guess the thing that you have with him is you got a year or two that if you feel Eli Manning still has the ability to lead the Giants for the next year or two, you have time to develop him, right? You don't have to plug him in and have him be so responsible for running your offense. And so if he can learn behind Eli Manning, he can get some coaching from that side of the ball. I think he'll be well. I will say the one thing that he did get in college at Duke is you're not going to find too many quarterback coaches and offensive coaches that are as well respected as the Duke's coaches. And so I think that was one of the things that came out with him particularly is in the conference that he played in, he wasn't the super standout. He didn't put up the major numbers. He was a 500 quarterback in a division or a conference that doesn't maybe have as solid and consistent teams. And the fear that some people had for him is he's probably not going to get any better coaching at the NFL level than what he had at Duke. So
Right.
what really is his upside then, right?
Yeah, I agree. Whereas you look at a guy like, I'm going to just jump to Drew Lock for just a minute. He's got a laser of an arm. I think Drew Lock, I watched him in the Senior Bowl this year. He fits some passes into some tight windows. He's an arm talent. There's no doubt about that. So I guess we'll see how that plays out for the Giants. But nonetheless, they took the quarterback from Duke. The Jaguars just made their pick. And finally, Josh Allen is off the board, the linebacker out of Kentucky. I had him going earlier in the draft, but Josh Allen was just taken. I had him going number 4. So Josh Allen is now off the board, selected by Jacksonville. Another high-quality defensive player
Absolutely.
for that Jacksonville Jaguars defense.
Yeah, I had him going 4th too, but he only dropped down a couple spots to number 7 with Jacksonville Jaguars. And as we talked about before the draft started, they need to bolster that defense again. They were dominant in 2017. They had a slide down in 2018 where they weren't as dominant. They let one of their defensive linemen go in free agency, and so they needed to bolster that back up, particularly with Nick Foles coming in. They need to do that. So to me, that's a good pick. That's a solid pick. That's going to be a plug-and-play guy too that can start, very athletic, can rush, run the edge. All his tangibles at the combine, his broad jumps, his 40-yard dashes, his bench press, all those things were all solid. So he's a safe, legitimate guy in defense for those guys. So it's a good pick for them.
So what they just put on the screen right now about Josh Allen, they put an NFL comparison and they compared him to Anthony Barr. That was who they compared him to.
Coming out of college.
Yep. But if you're compared to Anthony Barr, I mean, he looks pretty long. It's probably fairly, you see, look at how tall and long he is for a linebacker. So, good pick for them. Lions are on the clock right now. We're getting to the point where we're going to be about halfway to the Vikings pick. The Vikings hold the 18th pick in the NFL draft tonight. So you figure probably a little after 9, between 9 and 9:30, the Vikings are going to make their pick, and they will select their player.
So did you see who picked up? Who Tampa Bay picked up? I didn't see that scroll across the screen. Did you see that?
I didn't catch it either. I missed it for a second there. I think we might have been on break. So we'll go to one question on the comments, and then I want to start diving into the Vikings offensive line pick. So Christy from Hutchinson said, do you think the retirement of Scott Studwell from the Minnesota Vikings pro personnel department changes the dynamics of the 2019 draft strategy?
I'm trying to wonder if that came from her or her husband. There seems to be a Scott Studwell fetish. But we can certainly address that.
So that's an absolutely elite question. An elite football mind, only an elite football mind would come up with that. So that might be t-shirt worthy. So we look at that. I look at Scott Studwell and I say, he has more toughness in his eyes than I have in my entire body. I mean, you look at that guy.
I don't know if that takes a lot, though.
No, that's true. Scott Studwell could just crush you with his eyes, though. You look back at all the pictures of Scott Studwell from the years before. I mean, that guy, blood on the pants, number 55. He's got the 40 for 60 patch on his jersey. Unbelievable linebacker. We talked about this in the last SkolCast. And the question came up. I can't remember who it was from. I think it might have been from Christy as well, from Hutchinson. But she asked about Scott Studwell versus Chad Greenway comparison.
Right.
I said it was a toss-up. You went Scott Studwell.
I did go Scott Studwell. Yep.
Scott Studwell will be a loss to that personnel department. He's been there over 40. He's been with the Vikings over 40 years. definitely a loss for them.
Great guy.
Yeah,
a
great guy, and he'll definitely be a loss for that. When they announced that, I mean, everybody was choked up about the Scott Studwell retirement, and happy for him, but sad for us that we don't get to see his talents and come through on the Vikings.
Yeah, I always have this visual picture in my mind when that name comes up of the 80s, right? The old toughness, the tape on the fingers, the tape on the knuckles, tape across the nose, the old eye black,
the neck brace.
Right. I mean, just a tough guy that liked to get in there and liked to mess up the pile and liked to throw his body around, and was just a dynamic guy with super toughness, but also a super kind guy, super great guy. Left the organization, very personable. You'd always hear that when he'd be out in the public or he'd be at the facilities. People would talk to him, and he would never have a problem coming up and carrying on a conversation with people in the public or people that wanted to get his autograph. And so, just a very humble, a very nice guy.
For sure. Once again, we're broadcasting live from Main Street Sports Bar here in downtown Hutchinson, Minnesota. Appreciate everybody coming down here that's in person down here at the bar. You can obviously hear them in the back. Also, the commissioner is announcing the Lions selection right now. We'll get to that in a moment. But also appreciate everybody on the live stream. Definitely smash those reaction buttons. Leave a comment. Share it out. Share out the video. Tell your friends. And we got about probably another hour and 15 minutes to broadcast here tonight. And we will definitely keep you going here with some content. So the Lions just chose the tight end out of Iowa, TJ Hutchinson.
One of the two, right?
One of the two. The other one's Noah Fant. TJ Hutchinson goes to the Detroit Lions. He is the 2018 Big Ten tight end of the year. So a quality tight end. This actually hurts a little bit because this is a division foe that the Vikings are going to have to face twice a year. They're going to have to account for this guy now, and this is going to be someone in their defensive backfield, and those linebackers are going to have to account for not only from a blocking perspective, but from a pass catching tight end perspective as well. He's hugging the commissioner right now. TJ Hutchinson to the Lions. Your thoughts?
Yeah, to me that's a good pick. There are a couple primary needs that the Detroit Lions need to pick up, and we talked about that in the early part of the podcast. Cornerback was one of them, tight end, and an edge rusher. I actually thought they were going to pick up Sweat, for the pass rusher on the edge versus a tight end. So at that pick, I had to pick it up Montez Sweat from Mississippi State. But TJ Hutchinson is a good pick for them. It creates versatility on the offensive line. It gives Matthew Stafford a second option on the offensive side. And the piece that seems to set him apart from the stuff that I've read, from the stuff that I've seen, is he, at this stage of the game coming out of college, is a more complete tight end. So what I mean by that is not only is he a good pass catcher, does he run good routes, but he also is a more polished blocker on the offensive line. And so when you have a good pass catcher, a guy that can run good routes, but also can block downhill at the tight end position, and some guys equated him to like a Gronk that can play all those areas, that bodes well for the Detroit Lions because you can set him up in a tight end set where you can run the ball, you can split him out as a wide receiver, you can put him just a little bit out from the tight end into a slot position, and he can block a cornerback or a linebacker coming in. He's got good size, and he's a little bit more physical from a strength standpoint than Noah Fant is at this stage of the game. So he's just a little bit more round at this point. So that is a good pick, I think, for the Detroit Lions. It doesn't bode well for us because you're right. That's another area that we're going to have to contend with, and he's going to be a day one starter for those guys.
He is. So in 2018 in college, he converted 15 receptions on third down.
Yep.
So
he's an animal.
Yeah, we're going to have to account for him for sure. Apologize, I'll switch that over. The Buffalo Bills are on the clock, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. So let's start breaking down, now that we're kind of getting halfway there to where the Vikings are going to pick. Let's start taking a look at what we really think they might do with this 18th pick. I'm not asking us to make any predictions right now, but let's let's start diving in there. So we've talked about the offensive line. I definitely think there are a few options here, and we've talked about, we've beat it to death, the Gary Kubiak zone blocking, zone run, zone screen kind of scenario that we're going to run. We've got some athletic guys on the offensive side of the ball as well, with Adam Thielen, who can line up, who's dangerous. He's dangerous outside, but he's also dangerous in the slot as well. We've got Stephon Diggs on the outside. We've got Dalvin Cook at running back. We even have a nice fullback in C.J. Ham that can catch the ball out of the backfield some. We start taking a look at what we need on this offensive line, and as the offensive line has kind of taken shape here over the last few weeks, we added Josh Klein, the guard who came over from Tennessee as a free agent. We've got Pat Elflein at center, Brian O'Neill at that right tackle position. We still have Riley Reith, who's at that left tackle position.
Yep.
We've jettisoned Mike Remmers off the line, and so he's no longer with us. We saved some salary cap there, but there's a few ways that this Vikings pick could shake out here in about the next hour and 20 minutes. Let's start taking a look at it. Are they going to go with the best available offensive lineman, or are they going to go with the best fit for the scheme that they're going to run in the West Coast offense this year?
With the pick that I have, I think you can get a little bit of both, depending on if you want to draft an interior lineman or if you want to draft an offensive tackle. Again, from the Vikings' perspective, where do you put more stock? Again, do you look at you bringing in a guy that has the flexibility to play center, both guard positions, or maybe have some ability to move to the tackle position, maybe in a year or two of development? Or do you want to bring in a offensive tackle that's going to be an anchor on the outside? And so I think that's a question for me. I think when you look at where the NFL has gone over the last few years, and you look at teams that are successful on the offensive side of the ball, those are teams like a New England Patriots, right? Like in some situations, the Green Bay Packers, like a Seattle. And those are drop back, and in 2.5 seconds, they're throwing the ball, right? They're throwing the ball out in rhythm, out in a pattern. And so as much as elite edge rushers are a high-valued position, you're starting to see more timing routes and more things where the quarterbacks are getting it out quickly. Tom Brady's a perfect example of that. He doesn't run around. He drops back in a 3 or 5-step drop, and it's out. And he lets his receivers move around. He uses running back matchups to do that. So when you look at it from that perspective, and why I bring that up is, do you start having to spend more time putting offensive linemen on the line that can stop the interior pass rush? The dominant defensive tackle is putting the pass rush and bringing it straight at you versus worrying so much about the outside edge guys getting to you, because by the time they get there, the ball's already out. And I think some of the elite teams, the ones that are going a little bit further in the playoffs, they're doing that. They're not sitting back there for 5 seconds. They're making quick decisions and getting it out. So when I look at that from our perspective, and I think we got caught on that a little bit last year, with spending too much time sitting back there in the pocket and kind of waiting 4 or 5 seconds for some of these routes to open up. That created problems inside, and you were at the game in Chicago. We got destroyed on the inside. There was so much pressure coming from the inside with Hicks that it just everything broke down. The run broke down, the pass broke down. So my opinion is you shore up those middle 3 guys first. You make sure you have solid athletic guys that can play one-on-one against any of the interior linemen, and then look a little bit later in the draft for an outside tackle. Or do we think Riley Ralph is serviceable there? Can he, if he's one-on-one, can he win the majority of those matchups and eliminate a tremendous amount of pass rush? So for me, I personally like looking interior with the 18th pick. Then I think outside tackle. But if there's a dominant guy there, they may
I
look
agree
that
with
way.
you. And I take a look at that and I go, Kirk Cousins has or had a problem hanging onto the ball at times. He doesn't necessarily make the fastest decision getting rid of the ball. He's methodical in going through his first and second and third reads. And a lot of times I feel like he lacks a little bit of creativity, if you will. So he knows where the guys are supposed to be, but when it comes time and they're running their routes, and if they're not there for some reason, they got jammed at the line or the timing is off, he has difficulty kind of improvising, if you will, or being creative. So you kind of hit the nail on the head there with the interior offensive linemen. We need to solidify those positions, center and guard specifically. So we'll get to our picks here shortly once we get a little bit closer to the Vikings, but that's where I'm seeing them. That's where I see them leaning here in the next hour. So
let's take a step back and just Tampa Bay with their number 5 pick. They picked up Devin White, the linebacker from LSU.
okay,
Great pick. All the intangibles, fast, strong. He's going to be a leader on that defense. Does very well. Buffalo Bills with the 9th pick. They selected Ed Oliver from Houston.
okay,
Another solid performer.
great.
So safe picks there for positional needs that they need for both teams.
Yeah, Ed Oliver. There is some question there on Ed Oliver, not on the skill or on the skill set or the physicality or any of that. It's more on the attitude and the want and the drive and some of those things is what I would say. But I always said that if Ed Oliver fell to 18 somehow, the Vikings would be foolish not to take him. But the Buffalo Bills snatched him up, and they've got a good inside defensive lineman there. Hopefully they can get him to the point of being NFL ready and get his mindset in the NFL mindset, because when you're in college, I think you're so dominant over college skilled players, and you get to the NFL and it's a whole different ball game and it's elite. And so sometimes people, I think, take it for granted, or they think they're going to translate into instant success in the NFL versus in the college where they've been so dominant.
Well, and I think there's a higher expectation in the locker room too, right? You're a professional. You're getting paid to do those things. And so your teammates in that locker room aren't going to stand for a lot of that stuff. But you can't deny very talented playmaker.
So we have a trade. The Pittsburgh Steelers have traded with the Denver Broncos. So the Broncos traded out of that spot with the Steelers. I'm trying to look and see the Steelers.
They were 20th.
They were 20.
So they swapped 10 and 20. Denver went down to 20 and Pittsburgh moved up.
I had Pittsburgh taking
10.
Devin Bush here, the linebacker out of Michigan. I wonder if they like him enough that they felt like they had to jump up to 10th overall to get him. I don't know. That's why I had him taking. I guess we'll see what plays out here. The pick is in from the Steelers.
Yeah, I had Devin White going to Denver, the 10th pick. Obviously, we know that Tampa Bay picked him with the 5th pick, so he was off the board. So maybe that was part of the decision-making process too, is the guy that they really wanted wasn't there anymore, and so they were willing to move back and pick up their second or third options that will still be there probably at pick 20, right?
For sure. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see what the Steelers do here. They've traded with Denver, and that pick is in. So when we take a look at coming up here, we are then 8 picks now from the Minnesota Vikings selecting at 18. There's a lot that could happen here, but we are 8 picks away. We're probably in the next hour is what I'm guessing the Vikings will make their selection. So there's a lot that can play out, but the Steelers are making their selection right now, and we'll see what direction they go. I'm going to look at my website that I have here, and it does not show that pick. It did show the website that I was referring to earlier was showing that Denver was going to select Dwayne Haskins, the quarterback out of Ohio State. So we'll see what this. It's not reflecting the Steelers yet. So Mean Joe Green is at the podium for the Steelers. Sounds like he's making their pick.
Pittsburgh's primary needs are wide receiver, linebacker,
It's
cornerback.
Devin Bush.
Linebacker.
It's Devin Bush, the linebacker out of Michigan. Like I just said, I had them taking him at pick number 20, and Devin Bush is going to be the linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin for that defense. And I like this linebacker out of Michigan.
I do too. I actually had him being picked by Pittsburgh at 22. I'm guessing the thought is he wasn't going to be there at 20.
No, I think they would have.
They needed to move up and get the guy that they wanted. The guy's definitely a team leader on that defensive side of the ball. I mean, I think he fits in well in that scheme and the toughness that the Steelers always have. So I think he'll bring a lot of tenacity. Certainly, he's got the athletic ability.
Let's not forget the Steelers lost one of their key linebackers a couple years ago, Ryan Shazier, to that bad back injury that he suffered. He, that was an unfortunate injury where he's still learning and he's still in therapy and trying to, get his ability to walk and run and things back again. But Ryan Shazier is not on that defense at this time. So Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan. I think that'll be a nice fit for the Steelers.
Yeah, I do like this pick for them. I think he checks all the boxes for them as far as a linebacker goes for that defense. So that's a solid pick.
Absolutely. All right. So, again, appreciate all of you joining the SkolCast live on the air here. I know we got people all over. We've had people from New Zealand that have said that they've been on. We got people locally here. We appreciate you all coming. Definitely smash that reaction button. Give us a like or a wow on the reactions, and appreciate that. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and put a comment in there. One of the questions that came through from Don and Hutchinson was, what does the loss of Latavius Murray mean for the Vikings? This is one that you and I have talked about in previous episodes of the SkolCast. And, for me, I liked the complementary nature of Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook he's fast. He had the fastest speed in the NFL last year on one of his runs. They track miles per hour, and Dalvin Cook had the fastest speed on one of his long 70-plus yards run. I like the change of pace when Latavius Murray would come in. Latavius Murray is a bigger, more bruising back for me. It was a change of pace for the defense that they didn't know what they were going to expect, whereas Dalvin Cook, to me, is a three-down running back. He can run the ball, he can catch it out of the backfield, and unlike Adrian Peterson, who was a great running back for the Vikings, obviously, Dalvin Cook can block as well, and you can keep him in all three downs. But Latavius Murray gave such a nice change of pace for me. I don't know where we're at with the running back position in terms of, do we feel like Mike Boone right now can be that second running back that Latavius Murray was and can fill that void? Does he have enough? Does he have that bruising nature? Does he have enough twitch? Does he have enough of that speed in his step? But that more of that power running style to fill Latavius's void. What do you think on that?
I think he can be complimentary. I don't see him being as elite of, I guess, a runner as Latavius Murray at that level. The thing I liked about Latavius Murray was he was a downhill runner. He wasn't going to jump cut. He wasn't going to do a lot of cuts back and forth and try to find little creases. He was going to find a hole, and he was going to go straight ahead. And I think you're going to need some of that complementary type of running style with Delvin Cook. Delvin Cook is a little bit more, what I would say, in my mind, fits a little bit more of a zone blocking scheme where the line sets up, but he finds the crease that he likes, and then he's off to the races. He's not going to the A gap or the B gap or the C gap and just pounding it through there. The question for me is, do you want to complement that with the opposite style of running that Delvin Cook has? And if you do, then you look at someone that fits that. That's a little bit more of a bruiser in the draft. I don't know that I would say that the second and third players on the depth chart, which is Michael Boone and Abdullah Amir, that came over from Detroit last year, maybe fit the consistent play that they want behind Delvin Cook. And let's be real here. Delvin Cook has had some injuries. He hasn't been a consistent guy in the backfield that you can get 16, 17 weeks every season out of. And so you're going to need someone that can fill that void to a pretty good level that he has. So I think they do look at a running back in the later rounds this year. And if they find someone that they like, I think they look to take someone to help bolster that running back core.
So the Cincinnati Bengals have made their selection. The pick is in, and it's been announced. They have selected tackle Jonah Williams out of Alabama. This, for me, this puts the Green Bay Packers, this puts the Green Bay Packers on the clock right now. And the Bengals have solidified a need for them on the offensive line with this tackle out of Alabama. He was the second highest graded SEC tackle. So that's going to be a bookend for them. Should be a bookend for them for 10 years to protect Andy Dalton.
I actually had it in one of my mock drafts. I had actually the Vikings pick again with the 18th pick. I thought he could fall to us. I didn't necessarily think he would be there. In some of my other drafts, he went a little bit sooner, and obviously in the live draft, he did go in the 12th pick. So, but I think Green Bay was also looking at T.J. Hawkinson, but I think he went obviously earlier than Green Bay's pick, and so what better way to solidify your offensive line in that position for Aaron Rodgers than to pick up a guy from Alabama? So, I think that's a solid pick. He plays in the conference that has top caliber defensive linemen that he's played against this season, and so he's going to see that in the NFL level. So I think he's been tried and true in a lot of those players, and so I think that's a good pick for the Green Bay Packers. Unfortunately, that bolsters that offensive line for them.
Is this the first offensive lineman off the board? I don't see.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, Jonah Williams is the first offense pick, so it took 11 picks to get an offensive lineman off the board. Jawan Taylor is still on the board, isn't he?
Yes.
So.
And you know what? I only had one offensive lineman going through the first 12, and that was Jawan Taylor.
Okay. We're going to have to watch this. This is maybe a little bit developing for me. I don't think Jawan Taylor is going to be there at 18, but this is shaping up to where the Vikings should be able to get the player they want at 18. We'll talk about that shortly, but the Packers are on the clock. To me, I've got them taking Noah Fant here. I've got him going tight end here with Noah Fant with the other tight end out of Iowa. There may be another thought for that. I also, Draft Tech has Montez Sweat going to the Packers right here, the edge rusher out of Mississippi State. I think that's an option. The Packers have added a couple guys on defense.
They have
in the offseason here. I don't think they're going to be as much of a joke as they have been the last couple years. Although we all think that the Packers are a joke, right? Yeah, but
I got the Green Bay. I got their primary needs as a safety, tight end, and an offensive tackle.
Okay.
So I think they're fairly well on the defensive side. A secondary need for them as a linebacker. I think on the defensive line, I don't know that's a dominant defensive line, like someone, the top 5 dominant, but it's certainly good enough to hold their own in most games. So I don't see them looking for any of that type of thing. Montez Sweat, if you want to add another pass rusher that can do some things, work the edge, work the weak side linebacker position, you can move him around. You can certainly look that way, but tight end seems to be a logical choice for the Packers.
Yeah. And the Packers retained Jimmy Graham, didn't they? Jimmy Graham is still
I
a
believe
Packer.
so,
Yeah.
yes.
So, but he's aging as well. So
He wasn't as productive as he has been,
No.
particularly in his years with Seattle.
and last year just was kind of an off year for the Packers. Although some people are going to say that Aaron Rodgers maybe has peaked. I'd like to think that. For our sake, I'd like to think that. I don't know if that's the case. I think he's still dangerous. He can throw a 70-yard pass into a basketball hoop. I mean, he does that every year at the Packers, training camp or their fan fest or whatever you want to call it. So the Packers are in the midst of a makeover here. For people over in Wisconsin, I don't think you're ever just one player away from being like the Vikings found out last year. We thought we were one player away in Kirk Cousins. We thought, let's get this quarterback position solidified and we'll be all set and we'll go to the Super Bowl. Well, that didn't happen. The Packers kind of have found that out as well, to the degree of it takes more than just a quarterback. You need a whole team. And there were times where Aaron Rodgers is out there throwing it to who knows who, and his offensive line is maybe shaky at times and is aging and things. So, for me, I think we're looking at a tight end here or possibly even some more defensive help and for the Packers at this pick. And the commissioner is coming to the podium to announce the Packers pick, so we'll see who that is.
Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't be above them to pick up an offensive tackle, too.
So Roger Goodell is announcing the Packers selection, and they have taken the defensive end, Rashawn Gary, out of Michigan. So two Michigan defensive players go in the last 3 picks. So you got Rashawn Gary, who is going to the Packers. He's a defensive end. And 2 picks earlier, we had Devin Bush, the linebacker from Michigan. He went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, the Packers have solidified and tried to shore up this defense.
Yeah, there's certainly a common theme in the NFC North, isn't there? I mean, they're looking at what Chicago has done over the last 2 years of bolstering that defensive side. And so I think this guy fits in well with that kind of consistent theme, right? Hey, we've got some good receivers. Green Bay likes the receivers that they still have there. They've got Aaron Rodgers there. Their offensive line at times played well, just a little bit of inconsistency. Not necessarily that you need to take an offensive line in the first round for them. And they thought, you know what? With the offensive teams that we have in our division, bolstering probably that defensive side of the ball and making it tough on the other teams to guard some of these guys was a value to them. And that's a good pick for those guys.
So far in the draft, we've had 1 trade. The Denver Broncos traded out of pick number 10 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were at 20. Pittsburgh traded up and took Devin Bush, the linebacker out of Michigan, like we just said. And now the Packers have just taken defensive end Rashawn Gary. Everybody in Wisconsin to the east of us is clapping, and they're thinking how they're going to shut down the Vikings and the Bears offenses this coming season, which puts the Miami Dolphins on the clock.
Yeah, Miami could go a bunch of different ways, right? They've got some quarterback needs, offensive tackle, offensive interior line, and an edge rusher. I could see an offensive line position here being filled by Miami. This is start solidifying a little bit more of their offensive line positions.
So for this pick, I actually had the Dolphins taking a quarterback here.
Yeah.
I had them taking Drew Lock. I've got it right here on my mock draft, and Draft Tech on the Draft Tech website is showing Drew Lock, the quarterback out of Missouri.
Oh.
Obviously, we're not going to know for about 4 minutes which direction Miami is going to go, but this is intriguing for the Dolphins here because they have Ryan Tannehill. Last year we had Miami at home, and we had a 28-0 lead on them in the first half. They looked dead to rights, but then they kind of came back. I think they've got some young players down there. They no longer have Adam Gase as the head coach. I can't remember who their head coach is right now offhand. I'm sorry. But they're in a little bit of a rebuild themselves. I think they're not sure if Ryan Tannehill is the answer at quarterback. So we'll see what they decide to do here with this pick.
So I actually have Miami picking Andre Dillard, the offensive tackle from Washington State. Again, probably the most polished pass defender. Again, Washington State played a lot of passing schemes, more so than the run. Maybe needs to have a little bit of work kind of to shore up things on the run side of the ball. But let me pose this question to you. So knowing that next year's draft brings out some more consistent quarterbacks. Maybe they think next year's quarterback draft could be even stronger than this year's quarterback draft. With this pick, do you pick up a solid offensive tackle and wait a year to go after a quarterback next year, knowing that you've solidified what would be the left tackle and the most likely a right-handed quarterback's blind side? Or do you take the quarterback ahead of a tackle that may not, that type of caliber of pass defender may not be there next year? What's your crystal ball tell you? What would you do in that situation?
I would not take the quarterback here. I know I have him going. I know I have Drew Lock going here to the Dolphins. I know Draft Tech even has Drew Lock going to the Dolphins here, but I do not take Drew Lock here if I'm the Dolphins.
You think Tannehill is a good enough quarterback that can make them a winnable team and a playoff team?
He took them to the playoffs.
Yep.
I take the offensive lineman here.
I do too.
Because I look at the future and I go, I got Ryan Tannehill for this year. I don't know what his contract situation is, but I say I'm taking the offensive lineman, and I'm going offensive line with that for this year. So,
hey, should we pause and do another shirt giveaway?
You want to do the giveaway?
Should we do one?
Yeah, why don't you do this giveaway?
All right, I'm going to give a shirt giveaway here. Here's the question. What Vikings receiver was drafted out of Marshall University? Hey, even when I set you up for the question, you were still slower than the guys in the corner.
I think
He might have been a better receiver than a quarterback.
I do.
Extra small? Got it.
I do think that it came out of the corner. The answer came out of the corner.
You don't need to raise your hand. You're not in class.
So we
All
got a
right,
winner.
you got to come get your shirt.
Yeah,
Galen, extra small.
Galen, we ran out of smalls. Galen, sorry, buddy.
All right.
I did notice that we now have a hockey game on here.
We kind of lost that. Who's running the show around here? By
I know,
the way?
exactly. I thought this was the draft SkolCast. I mean, we're not looking at the NHL here.
I mean, I do like the NHL playoffs as well. I mean,
Right.
it's a good matchup.
So while we were away there, while we were doing that giveaway, the Dolphins did make their selection. They selected defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, another Clemson
Yep.
defender. He's going to the Dolphins. Those Clemson defenders, they're getting scooped up here early in this draft. I think that makes them definitely adds some talent to that Miami defense. We talked about the quarterback situation there. I think they obviously decided they're going to go with Ryan Tannehill. And the two-time first-team All-ACC selection in 17 and 18 is going to go to the Miami Dolphins, Christian Wilkins out of Clemson.
Yeah, I had him as a secondary need for the Miami Dolphins, that position. So not a real stretch that they picked him up. Again, played for Clemson, played in the SEC where there's high caliber of college talent week in and week out. And I think he will do well for Miami down there.
Oh, and I appreciate it. Jair, on the comments, Jair Castro did correct us. Ryan Tannehill went to Tennessee, so they do not have Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. So appreciate that correction, Jair. Thanks for watching, and appreciate it. So we're getting close here. We're 5 picks away from the Vikings selection, and the Falcons pick is in, so we're soon to be 4 picks away. I suppose we should start making some
predictions here.
Predictions. Well, I'm just going to lay it out there.
All right. I'll tell you mine after I hear yours. We'll see who comes closer to the actual pick for the 18th selection.
So for me, the Vikings selection, and we'll talk about the Falcons pick here in just a couple minutes. If you want to make sure we take note of it when it comes in. But for me, this selection that the Vikings are going to make here in just a little bit is it's addressing a need that they have in 2 spots. I think it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of different offensive linemen. The Vikings, I think, are definitely going to go offensive line with this selection. For me, the pick here at 18 coming up is going to be Garrett Bradbury. He is the best center in this draft. He's a technician. He can block in space, and I don't think there's any question that Garrett Bradbury is going to be the selection here. You can slot him in as your center for the next 10 years. You can move Pat Elflein over to guard. So then you have an offensive line that looks like Riley Reif, Pat Elflein, Garrett Bradbury, the dude that we picked up from Tennessee, and then Brian O'Neill. Josh Klein at the right guard. And then at the right tackle, you got Brian O'Neill. And I think if they put that offensive line on the field on the first Sunday that they play, I think that's a better offensive line than they put out there last year. So for me, I think this pick is going to be Garrett Bradbury. But let's look at the Falcon selection here, and then I'll get your take. So
Chris Lindstrom from Boston College.
So I had Chris Lindstrom as a possibility for us in the late first round or early second round if we were to jump up and get him. He's the guard out of Boston College, and he would have been a nice selection for us. But the Falcons obviously saw something in him. They grabbed him here at pick 14, so Chris Lindstrom is going to the Falcons. Is Jawan Taylor, is it just me, or is Jawan Taylor still on the board?
He's moving down. Yeah, I didn't think he'd move down that far, but he has. You get 1 per session.
Oh, we got a
I'll let you read the question, but you kind of stole my thunder.
Sure.
I think we're looking at the same cheat sheet here.
So we do have another question on the comments. So, which was the better rant? So, from a former Vikings coach. So you look at, a Vikings coach loses a game and he meets with the media afterwards and he just loses it, or he has a rant or against the media. So, better rant from former Vikings coaches. Jerry Burns after winning the Rams game in 1989, or Denny Green after his Arizona Cardinals lost to the Bears. And they are who we thought they were.
Yeah. I was just thinking the same thing.
You want to crown them? Crown them.
I would give you a little bit of Jerry Burns, but I don't want to get kicked off the stage. There are a lot of F-bombs flying around there, but you can't get away with that nowadays, or you probably could, a few of those, but not 25 minutes worth of that. But it definitely is both of them were very comical, I got to tell you that.
Yeah.
Both were classic heat of the moment responses to sometimes the media's questions that aren't real thought out and are just poking the proverbial bear, right? So I personally like Jerry Burns's. Again, you could get away with that back in the day. Probably isn't as grammatically correct as it is nowadays, but
yeah, that Denny Green one though is classic. I mean, I love that one. They are who we thought they were. It's awesome. You could go either way on that one.
So I'm going to get back into the Atlanta Falcons with Chris Lindstrom. I actually had Chris Lindstrom and Garrett Bradbury, kind of the top two interior offensive linemen. I think the Vikings, if they're going to put stock in bolstering their offensive interior line versus the outside, those are probably the two guys you look at. But I'm on the exact same page as you. The most logical guy that you pick up, if you're going to pick up an offensive lineman, is Garrett Bradbury from NC State. Same reasons that you have. One, he is the only true center in this year's draft. Has the athletic ability, moves well, has good hands, gets out of the pocket. Plus, you all of a sudden move Pat Elflein from center back to guard, which is where he feels more comfortable at. So in one pick, you're putting a true center in the position where he plays very solidly, and you move the guy that played center back to guard where he is more comfortable and as athletic as Garrett Bradbury. The other piece, if you read a lot of the statistics on Garrett Bradbury, is what was the offensive scheme they run at NC State? It's the zone blocking scheme, right?
Yeah.
He flourished in that scheme. He's athletic. He moves around in that B-C gap to the A gap. He's got good hands. He sticks to guys, but he also can get out and get to the second level. And so for me, with one pick, you've significantly improved two positions on your team. So for me, the logical choice would be Garrett Bradbury in this draft, at least at this pick.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I'm with you on that pick.
I mean, looking at some of the reports on him and some of the scouting reports, I mean, in his run blocking, he's a technician. He's intentional about playing with leverage. He takes consistent pass sets and effectively frames the rushers. Excellent in blocking in space, glides through space and climbs to the second level. So for me, that's the guy. I don't see them going a different direction here, like a Cody Ford or somebody like that. But I think Garrett Bradbury is the pick here. The Redskins pick is in, and then we're going to go to pick 16. And then after that, we'll be a couple picks away from the Vikings pick. So
yeah, to me, he is the most logical pick, Garrett. Now, again, what's the stock on a tackle? Do you want to really shore up an offensive tackle because you're going to have Kirk Cousins sit back there? And
right.
and in the division that we play in particular, where we see those guys twice a year, these teams are bolstering up their edge rushers.
For sure.
So do you try to combat that with an offensive tackle? That's the debate that you have, right? But some of these guys have fallen. Some of these guys could be there in round 2, right?
For sure.
In Friday's draft that you could pick up. But
Yeah.
I think you show the inside first, especially in his own blocking.
I agree. I agree. Don wants to know, what round will the Vikings draft a kicker and a punter? I would say that they're done drafting kickers and punters.
We tried the 5th round last year, didn't we?
Yeah, the only thing that would be better is maybe we should just jump up and get one in the 1st round here. You know? I mean, Daniel Carlson didn't work out.
I don't know if we've had a real solid proven track record with our kickers.
No.
But
we do have a new... And there he goes. Washington Redskins have selected quarterback Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State.
they didn't even have to move up and replace their 15th pick with the Jets' 3rd to get him.
No.
He was there.
Well, and now you start to wonder, you look at Alex Smith and the gruesome leg injury that he had. I start to wonder, is Case Keenum now the stopgap for this year, and they're going to go to Dwayne Haskins after that?
Yes, I think so. Yep. You're not going to take him again. His tangibles are smart. No, finds the reads, is the pocket passer, isn't the most sleight of foot, isn't the fastest running back there, but makes all the throws that you have. Now, some will say this last year when he put up significant stats that he had some good receivers there. So I do think he comes in a year or two and is starting. I think Case Keenum is a stopgap. You don't know if Alex Smith is going to come back. I certainly don't think you're drafting him to sit on the bench for 5 years.
No.
So I think he moves.
No, I think I definitely think that this is the successor to Case Keenum. Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State going to the Redskins. If the Vikings don't go with Garrett Bradbury here, what are the other logical choices for them?
I think you got a few. I think you got.
Are you looking at a Cody Ford?
I think he's out there. I think he's one. I think we said Jawan Taylor's still out there.
Jawan Taylor's still out there, I believe.
Andre Dillard. Is he gone or is he still out there?
Let me check.
I think he's still out there, right? We haven't gotten into the major tackles yet.
No.
So I think he's another logical choice from the standpoint that he is probably the most sound pass defender. And again, you pay Kirk Cousins that kind of money to come in. You've signed your receivers to long-term contracts. You're not going to sit and run the ball 85% of the time, right? You're going to try to balance it 50-50. So if you want to bolster that away, then you pull him out. And so he's another logical choice.
Yeah, absolutely. The Draft Tech website that I follow has the Carolina Panthers taking Andre Dillard with this next pick. So we'll see what they do here. But they're showing Andre Dillard as being the next pick for the Carolina Panthers. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of offensive line. I think the Vikings are going to end up with 2 offensive linemen in the first 3 picks here. That's kind of been the thought. I think you could look at a Dalton Reisner. You could look at him. Lindstrom is gone now. Garrett Bradbury, Jawan Taylor's still on the board. I've said that 10 times now, but gosh, that's a high-end talent that I had going almost in the top. I had him going in the top 6. I had Jawan Taylor going in the top 6 of this draft, and he's still on the board. I'm absolutely shocked that Jawan Taylor.
Yeah, I had him at 6th.
Yeah.
I had him going to the Giants. That was a shock to me that they ended up taking a quarterback with the 6th pick.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones. But they must see something in him that they like about him. So I actually have the Carolina Panthers. I have them picking up a safety.
Okay.
I have them picking up Chauncey Gardner,
Okay.
Jones from Florida, Johnson. So that's one of their primary needs. But there's also some good tackles out there still, right?
There is.
So, which is also a need of theirs as well. So,
The Panthers are set at quarterback. They've got Cam Newton, who, when he was drafted, the big question was, who should you take? Should you take Cam Newton or should you take Blaine Gabbert or Jake Locker? Those were the two guys. Those were the three guys that everybody was asking about. Oh, who should you take? Looks like an absolute joke now.
well,
Blaine Gabbert, I think, is still in the league. But
hindsight's 2020, right? Sometimes.
it is. But you look at the Panthers, and they're making their selection now. We'll give that to you here in just a second. Pick number 16 for them. And they're going to make a selection here. So they went with Brian Burns. So they went with the defensive end out of Florida State. So Brian Burns is off the board.
And that is a primary need of theirs. Their primary needs are an edge rusher, an offensive tackle, interior line, and a safety. So they've addressed probably their primary need at defensive end or an edge rusher with Brian Burns. I like that pick for them.
That's a good pick for them.
That's a good pick.
Yeah.
I didn't think he'd be there that far down the board. But.
The 2018 Chuck Bednarik semifinalist. He was the team's MVP and defensive MVP for Florida State in 2018. That's a nice pick for them. Brian Burns.
Yeah, I actually had him going 9th, the Buffalo Bills, because they needed also a pass rusher on the edge as well. But they ended up taking Ed Oliver, which you kind of splitting hairs probably from the athletic ability, right, between those two.
I think you are. I think you're splitting hairs there. So we are 2 picks away from the Vikings selection. We're going to stick with you here. I was going to go to break here, but we're too close now. We're less than 20 minutes away from the Vikings pick. I think we're going to stick with you here through the Vikings pick. So, again, we're broadcasting live from Main Street Sports Bar here in Hutchinson. On the clock right now, in about 6.5 minutes, the New York Giants are going to select, and then your Minnesota Vikings are going to select after that at pick number 18. And we're getting close. We've already made our picks for the Vikings. You and I have both said that we think it's Garrett Bradbury. We'll see how this works out. But
playing devil's advocate, do you see them picking up anyone at this pick outside of a lineman? Is there anyone that you think is out there that they feel that they just cannot go that direction? That's not an offensive lineman.
Not right now. There isn't. I had the only two. If there was a defensive player like I said Devin Bush or Ed Oliver. Those are the two that I thought if they'd fall that far, Mike Zimmer might be tempted to take them. I don't think. Other than that, I think this is going to be an offensive lineman. We're close to knowing that answer right now. We appreciate everybody joining us on the live stream tonight. We're live here at Main Street Sports Bar in Hutchinson, Minnesota. We're broadcasting live stream here. We appreciate you bearing with us. We've had some, early on, we just had some audio adjustments to make, and so we appreciate that. We're trying to build a following here on the Vikings Beat page. Share us out and smash the comment or the like button or the reaction button on Facebook. We appreciate it. And there might be some even laughing or some other things. So appreciate all that. Yeah,
hey, and certainly if you think that Chris and I are way off base on who the Vikings should take or that pick, again, we both have Garrett Bradbury. Seems like a logical choice. Move some guys around, some pieces on the line. If you think we're way off base and they just need to go a different direction, tell us who you think they should pick and why.
For sure. So
outside of a kicker or a punter.
Yeah, we're not going to take any kickers or punters. There's no way we're doing that. So my draft tech website that my good draft buddy Brendan Anderson kind of showed me and has used for many years, drafttech.com has us taking Jawan Taylor So that'll be interesting. That's what they show. I do think Juwan Taylor is probably one of the highest rated tackles in this draft, but I'll be curious to see what
I
they
think
do
he was
here.
the highest rated tackle in the
I think he
draft.
was too, and like I said before, I had him going in the top 10 for sure of this draft. So that is there.
He's certainly my top offensive tackle, Juwan Taylor. Then you've got Jonah Williams from Alabama, who's gone already. Then I had Cody Ford, Dalton Reisner, Andre Dillard, and then I think you got some guys in the later rounds like Yadni Kajusta and Bobby Evans and Greg Little out of Mississippi. So again, the top tackle, that's a hard position to pass up as well, right? At
That
the
would be.
18th,
That would be.
If he's there.
For sure.
So now the question is, where do the Giants go? Do they pick up Juwan Taylor now? Because I had them picking up him at the 6th pick and a quarterback at the 17th, while they picked up Daniel Jones at the 6th pick. So
Right.
do they know that Juwan Taylor was going to be there for the 17th, and we wanted to make sure that they picked up their quarterback, who they perceive as the future behind Eli Manning? Or do they go a totally different direction from an offensive lineman?
Yeah. So is Brian Burns is off the board,
He's
right?
gone,
Yeah.
right.
So I don't think that's going to be the pick. I'm wondering if this is a spot for Juwan Taylor right here.
It sure seems like it's setting up that way. But
That's just what I'm thinking. They drafted Saquon Barkley last year. He was the offensive rookie of the year, and they're going to want to run the ball with him. So I don't think there's any doubt that shoring up that offensive line would be a priority for them. The other piece is that we've talked about is Montez Sweat is still on the board as well. So there's a possibility there that they've gone offense with quarterback with their first pick. Could they go Montez Sweat with this pick and go to the defensive side of the ball? We'll see. I wanted to set this up as well, so when we sorry to cut you off there if you had a comment.
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
I want to just set this up so the Vikings are going to be on the clock here soon, if they're not already, and they'll be making the selection. We're going to take you all the way through the selection. When they choose, when they make their pick, stay with us. We'll break down and have analysis of that pick. And then after the pick comes in and we've talked through it and things, we're gonna start our process of signing off. So we appreciate everybody joining tonight on the live stream and things. Definitely follow our page, Vikings Beat, Facebook.com/Vikings Beat, Twitter @Vikings Beat. So definitely appreciate all that.
I got a comment from Bob Eichten. It's comical, so I have to read it to you.
All right.
He says, I've got two 1,500-pound steers that the Vikings can have for $20,000 to shore up the offensive line. What do you think of that? Couple cattle.
That's the best he can do, huh, Bob? All right.
$20,000, I mean, that'd help with the salary cap, wouldn't it?
Right, exactly.
Not
It
quite
would-
sure
it
how
would.
coachable they would be to
would.
get to the second level of a linebacker, but
Right. So
it's certainly an interesting concept.
it is. So the Giants selection is in, and the commissioner is announcing it now, and I'm imagining a lot of you too, if you're tuned into it on your television, you're watching it too. We're watching it with bated breath here because then the Vikings are. Oh, looks like they're going over to the overseas to make the selection. Cool. Another
Dexter
Clemson,
Lawrence.
another Clemson defensive player.
That's 3, right?
That is 3.
And 17 picks.
Dexter Lawrence, the defensive tackle from Clemson.
I'll tell you, Dabo Sweeney's having a track record here, isn't he? He's pumping out NFL players. I don't
Wow.
know. Do you start putting him in the same echelon as the
As
Alabama?
Right. That's what I'm
Boy.
wondering too. Wow.
That's impressive.
That is very impressive. Well, now,
One quick. So Ryan Alberts asks, is there any cornerback that the Vikings would consider outside of an offensive lineman? For me, there's one guy in my mind, Greedy Williams.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at corner, you're going to go.
He's the only guy that was a shutdown cornerback that you would take in the first round.
Exactly.
But the trade after that is Rick Spielman can't go home then, right?
Yeah, exactly. His wife said, "Don't come home."
Because his wife said, you draft another cornerback in the first round and don't come home. So maybe I can give him your number. But he's a good cornerback.
So the Vikings are on the clock, and if those of you were not on the live stream here just a little bit ago, Jeremy and I did make our prediction. They are showing the draft party at US Bank Stadium. We've been in attendance to that many years in the past, but we're glad to be here with you now this year on the SkolCast. And we both agreed that this pick is going to still, I think it still is. I think it's still going to be Garrett Bradbury. I mean, unless Montez Sweat or something has just wowed them, I think this pick is Garrett Bradbury here. Jawan Taylor's still on the board, though.
He is.
So
right?
if they're looking for a tackle, they might go that way too. But
yeah, Jamie Frisbee asked, who are they picking? And we both agree.
Yeah.
To me, the most logical, because you can move those guys around, right? You're solidifying two positions. You're moving him to center in a zone blocking scheme, which he excels at, and you're moving Pat Elflein from center over to guard. And so you've shored up two spots with potentially solid and potentially Pro Bowler caliber offensive linemen.
For sure.
So that's my logical choice.
Yeah, and when I look at where we're at, it does. Like I said, it kills two birds with one stone. So Garrett Bradbury checks those boxes for me. He's great in space. Best center overall in this draft. Pat Elflein can move to the guard position where he even feels more comfortable. And I think...
And then you got Josh Klein, right?
And you got Josh Klein at the guard. So the Vikings pick is in. So the commissioner will be coming to the podium shortly. The Vikings have made their selection. Unlike the year that they selected Kevin Williams, which I think they were late with the pick, they did get the pick in on time this year, so that's good. The Vikings pick is in. We're going to have it for you as soon as we see it here. There's Sid Davey, the legendary Viking that we see at all the games.
Fan faithful right there.
Yep. The Skolgers are there, and
certainly after the pick comes in, we want your guys' feedback. What do you think of it? You think it's I said after the pick comes in.
Yeah, not before.
Someone say you're premature. But it'll be here shortly.
Again.
All right.
And the commissioner is walking to the podium.
We'll see if Chris and I know anything or if we're completely out base. I think it's one of two, Jawan Taylor or Garrett Bradbury. Jeez.
There it is.
Let's see. Huh?
It's Garrett Bradbury, the center out of North Carolina State. The Vikings selected him. The best center in the draft. 6'2", 7/8", 306 pounds. He ran the 40 in 4.92. You knew we needed an offensive lineman, and we got him. And he's the nation's top center. He won the Remington Award.
Yeah. Guy is a ferocious athlete. Moves well in space, runs well, particularly again in the zone blocking scheme, right? You're looking for those guys that can get out in space. They can move. He's definitely one of those guys. You parlay him next to Pat Elflein, now who they're going to for sure put over to guard. And you've got two potentially Pro Bowler players standing right next to each other on the interior offensive line. Fantastic pick. It's going to be a safe pick. It's going to have stability there for the next 10 years on the offensive line. There's still going to be some offensive tackles out there that they can get in rounds 2 and 3, but this is going to solidify some of the interior there. And so from a Vikings standpoint and a Vikings fan, you have to be happy with that pick. It's a needed position. It helps with the run game inside with Dalvin Cook and the zone schemes that they're going to run. It just makes sense.
Yeah, and he only allowed 2 sacks on 512 dropbacks last year.
We'll let
2
that
sacks.
go, 2.
So,
I can live with 2.
2, yeah.
3 maybe not, but
So-
2, I'm okay with that.
We are definitely. I'm happy with that pick. I think that's a great pick for the Vikings. That fills a huge need, and I'm hoping that Pat Elflein has a better season than he had last year when they do this move over to guard.
I think they're banking on that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Don't you think moving him back into a more comfortable position, which he says himself is a more comfortable position, just creates a better environment for him to be more successful and get back to a Pro Bowl level caliber? Don't you
sure.
think that's what they're thinking there
For sure.
on that piece? So,
This is great. Well,
right, safe pick.
Yep, it
Correct.
is a safe pick. It is. And he'll be great in the Kubiak offense. Awesome.
Yeah, you certainly know that there was some influence there, right, with the type of scheme that they're going to institute going into the 19 season and the type of player they're looking to fill that scheme, right? That's a perfect fit for what they're going to try to do. Now, time will tell on the zone blocking scheme and some of that morphed offensive formations and schemes that they're going to run, whether that bodes well for us this season. But a lot of teams are running that type of zone blocking scheme. You've got Kansas City Chiefs are running that. You've got Seattle that's running that scheme. You've had Jacksonville Jaguars running that scheme. Denver Bronco, obviously, they've been running that for years, and they were kind of ahead of the curve on running more of that zone blocking scheme. And so, but a lot of teams are doing it now, and so I think that's some of the Kubiak influence. And Stefanski obviously thinks that scheme will work well with the personnel that we currently have on the roster and some of the personnel that we're going to pick up in the draft. So I think it's a win-win.
I do too.
So
Yeah, I absolutely do. So my prediction still is that this is going to be, there's still going to be 2 offensive linemen picked in the first 3 rounds of this draft. I don't think Garrett Bradbury is the last offensive lineman that we're going to pick. I think we're for sure going to grab one here in the next couple of rounds. We'll definitely see how it goes. So looking at the rest of the draft, we've got round 2 tomorrow night.
they've got the 50th pick, right, in round 2.
So pick number 50 is tomorrow night, and you know that's a key slot to fill as well. That 50th pick there, you're looking at another. You could be looking at a defensive, interior defensive lineman there. You could be looking at another offensive lineman, depending on where they fall. But this 50th pick is another key one. So.
Yeah, I think they got it right. And I look for those guys a little bit later in some of the rounds to really address some of the receivers. There's a good running back core there. Some of those guys will be there in the 3rd, 4th rounds that they could pick up to help bolster that depth chart back there. Again, you got Dalvin Cook. If you presume that he stays fairly healthy, you really then need a change of back, in there to give him a little bit of break. I think Amir Abdullah, he can fit that.
For sure.
Boone certainly can. So it's not that it's a super pressing need there, but if you get some good value in those later rounds with some of those college guys that have some skill set, a lot of those guys in the draft have good hands. They're all, from a measurable standpoint, they're all in that 5'9", 5'10" range, 200 pounds. Some have a little bit more speed, a little bit more versatility. But there's some, I think, solid running backs. Do I see pro caliber running backs like a Saquon Barkley in this draft? No, I don't see any of those types of caliber teams. But I think you've got solid NFL running backs that can contribute plays on the offense to give Dalvin Cook a break. And so I think there's some opportunity there as well.
For sure. Yeah, and to kind of tie a bow on that piece, I think there's a few more slots that need to be filled in terms of depth. And we talked about cornerback for the Vikings. We talked about that. And we talked about, possibly quarterback, drafting one in the later rounds. I like a guy named Gardner Minshew in the later rounds. I think that could be a possibility for them to pick someone like that up in a quarterback position and get him in for a competition there to see how that would go. So there's definitely some value in those later rounds. But now, looking forward, rounds 2, 3, and 4 are where this team is going to be built. We're going to need to get some quality starters in there and just get some more, some guys that can step up here in the coming years and fill in for some of the guys that are either maybe on larger contracts that are getting older or different things like that. So we talked about tight end. We talked about Kyle Rudolph. That there's a possibility there. With maybe they're going to redo his deal. He seems to be open to that. We'll kind of see how it all plays out here.
I think if Irv Smith Jr. is there from Alabama, that tight end with the 50th pick, to me that's I think is a good pick to bring in a tight end that can be some depth behind Kyle Rudolph. That eventually would be the main guy. I mean, he's got some intangibles, some qualities there. Strong guy, good route runner, does well in the pass blocking scheme. So he could be a potential guy out there that would be well, play well into the Vikings scheme at 50. There's some cornerbacks out there too. I know cornerbacks is kind of the no-no because we feel like there's some depth there, but you can never always, as they say, never have enough secondary to shut down offenses from the other team. So
yeah, you can never have enough cornerbacks, that's for sure. So, well, again, we appreciate everybody joining us tonight here live at Main Street. Thank you all for coming on down here live. Thanks everybody for watching on the stream. I know there's been quite a few of you on there from a distance. Northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, down in Fairmont. I know some of you have been on there. We appreciate you all watching, and definitely it's been a good time. And just in that, the SkolCast has kind of been something that, it just came to fruition in the last few months, but I've kind of joked about it with you over the years and said, hey, we should just start something. You and I talk quite often on rides home from the Vikings games, on different things like that about, hey, what should the Vikings do in this situation? What should they do with this player? Where are they at in the season? Are they going to make the playoffs? Where are they at? We've even sat at night, having over a beer and just talked a lot about sports in general or the Vikings or different things like that. So this has kind of been something that's kind of come to fruition here recently, and I've enjoyed this so far, and hopefully we'll keep it going, and it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a good few hours, so I think we're definitely happy with the first round pick that the Vikings had. Again, thank you guys for the comments that you've sent in. Hopefully we tried addressing all those and giving you some responses. So thanks for the engagement there as well. And we'll look forward to seeing what they do in the later rounds here tomorrow and Saturday.
For sure. My guess is we don't have anything on the docket right now, but I'm sure we'll schedule a after draft SkolCast here in the next probably a week or so. We'll get something on the calendar, and you guys can keep an eye out for that. And we'll kind of analyze the entire draft as a whole, see what needs they filled, see which players they picked up, and kind of analyze where do they still have needs,
right?
And where is there going to be some competition at in training camp? After a draft weekend here, the NFL calendar actually kind of slows down. It just kind of grinds to a halt until July. So you look at May and June, and there isn't a ton of activity. There's some mini camps. There's rookie mini camp and some of those kinds of things coming up, but there's not necessarily a big event like this,
right?
This caliber, of this magnitude coming up here. So once late July hits, though, and training camp comes, that's when everything really kicks into gear. So in about 60, let's see, is it about 90 days or so from now, that's when things will really kick in on the NFL calendar. But for the next 90 days or so, things are going to be a little bit quieter, but we'll definitely get some SkolCasts scheduled, one after the draft here, and then keep them moving forward. So appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once the draft is done, obviously the coaches will have some work to do to look at all their picks and how they can best structure their roster and see kind of where things go going into the preseason and the OTAs. So
great. Well, I got a few thank yous. So the first thank you is I'd like to thank Main Street Sports Bar for hosting us here tonight. They've been very accommodating, and they've definitely, helped us out and letting us get this all set up here tonight and worked with us on everything. Appreciate Ryan Alslaven and the staff here at Main Street Sports Bar in Hutch for hosting us. It's been a lot of fun. I'd also like to thank Nate Baldry from Branded Solutions for the apparel and different things like that. So I'd like to thank him for pulling that off in short notice. Cody Barrett as well. He's our graphic designer. The dude is talented. He helped us out with a lot of all the graphics, the logos and all the graphics that we have here that you see on the screen and everything that we have. Cody's a great guy, great graphic designer, and so I really appreciate his help and things and that. So, and I'd like to also thank our wives for this one. I know
it's a good time to say it while they're gone.
Exactly. They rolled their eyes when we told them that we were kind of going to do this, and especially my wife, and I think your wife was probably like, "Are you seriously going to do this?" So appreciate their support and willingness to allow us to do something like this. And so Sarah and Bethany, appreciate it. And,
and they came down.
They came
down.
Yeah.
And support.
They
might have rolled their eyes a few times, but
it
was
right.
fine.
Yeah. Thank you all the fans for watching and coming down. And then lastly, I just want to thank you, Jeremy, for co-hosting this thing with me tonight. And we'll keep the train rolling here. And it's been a lot of fun. And I love your analysis and your kind of you have a football mentality. So I really I appreciate your counterpoint to me, and it's a good match. So
I appreciate your time as well. And hey, season's going to be coming around the corner, and there'll be some exciting stuff coming up. So we'll definitely stay engaged and engage with the viewers out there and keep you up to date on what things are going on with the Vikings.
Perfect. Garrett Bradbury is the 18th pick of the Minnesota Vikings. He will be their new offensive lineman, the center. So a great pick to recap that. And appreciate you all watching and joining. We're going to sign off. And Skol. See you guys.